May I remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be streamed live on webcast from the Council's website. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Briggs, Hazel Gloucester, Hoban, Ibrahim and Sykes. Is Council agreed that the Council minutes from the meeting held on the 6th of November 2019 are agreed as correct record of the meeting? Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting? Councillor Chris Gloucester and Elaine Garrett have pecuniary interest at item 8D by virtue of employment with Greater Manchester Police. Can members declare any matters to the meeting?
My appointment to Mayo Care, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, membership of Positive Steps Board, Cabinet Minutes, page item 12 of the 18th of November.
Madam Mayor, the same pages as Councillor Roberts for the same purpose.
Administration business, motion 2, I think it's a pecuniary interest because I'm employed by Manchester City Council, so I would be a beneficiary of this.
There will also be a form circulated around the chamber for members to complete if they have an interest. Item 4, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 5, communications. Council will be aware that former councillor and Mayor Garrett Evans sadly passed away recently. I'm sure the Chamber will join me in sending our thoughts and condolences to his family. Members have indicated their wish to speak. Can members join me in a minute's silence, please?
so many charities, and in particular Macmillan. As part of fundraising, his bacon butties were legendary in Saddleworth. Derek was a primary school governor and incredibly active, where he put his heart and soul into this role. He was respected by staff and pupils alike at the school. In terms of fire and rescue, Derek was the Lib Dem Steve Williams. Derek has served on as Chair of Saddleworth Parish Council, Mayor of Oldham, and Mayor of Osterlands, and also Father Christmas too. Derek suffered a fair bit in his last couple of years or so, and not being able to be always in the same residence as Derek was really hard for him. Derek was an independent man, frustratingly so sometimes. He would give so much help, but never asked for it. Derek is what I would say is a true definition of a Liberal. As well as a great knowledge of the community, he had a great knowledge of wine and beer too. He was kind and warm and positive. He was so easy to talk to. Derek will be greatly missed. Rest in peace, my friend.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I've known Derek for 30 odd years, and anybody who says he was a man of a few words didn't really know him, because Di and I talked on Monday, and I'm very sorry that the leader of the opposition, Councillor Howard Sykes, wasn't well on Monday, and he wasn't himself, and I've learned since that he is in hospital. And I would like at this point, I know Derek would like me to include that we write to Howard Sykes, wishing him well and hoping he's soon back in his position in this council. Because Derek Effingham was a community man. I don't know how the Liberals can say what a wonderful Liberal he was, because they deselected him. And I remember saying to Derek, you'll win regardless, because you're a man of the people, and you've never forgotten, and he never did forget, why he was in this chamber and why he was in the chamber at Saddleworth, because he spoke up for the community. He was a community person, and I'm glad, really, that 3 days before he died, he managed to get in a double room with his wife Di in the care home that looked after her marvellously and would have looked after Derek marvellously. I'm sad that Derek didn't make it, but I'm pleased he didn't suffer for a long time. But he suffered, having served a long time for 30 odd years for the public. And if I agree with Garth that if more people would be like Derek, we'd have a better council, both here and at Saddleworth. I think Derek Effingham is a man of the people and will never be forgotten, Madam Mayor. And I'll tell you what, even he was one of the few mayors that even when he wasn't in office, he still supported the mayor and the chairman of Saddleworth Parish Council, regardless of their political allegiance. He was a person that reflected not just Saddleworth, the whole of the metropolitan borough of Oldham. He was what you and I call, why we're doing it, a gradely chap. And I think we should not forget the likes of Derek Effingham. I think he made a wonderful contribution, and I think it's our job to remember him. Thank you.
Councillor Fielding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, my first political campaign as a Labour Party candidate was standing as the Labour candidate in Saddleworth North back in 2011. And that year, Derek was the retiring councillor. And Saddleworth North is very politically alive. And as such at the time, the Saddleworth News website organised a hustings in the upstairs room of the Swan Inn in Dobb Cross, which I still have night terrors about, being only 21 at the time. Now, as many of us in this chamber know, that hustings are of very little value, particularly in local elections. It simply becomes a battle as to which candidate can turn out the most of their supporters to clap and cheer the loudest in the room on the night. And there are actually very few people who turn up to political hustings who haven't already made their mind up. So it's fair to say that on that evening, I lost that battle. Whilst we turned out a significant number of Saddleworth Labour Party members to that hustings to support me, the cheers and the clapping for Derek that evening were significantly louder than they were for me or for anybody else. And at the end of the meeting, I said to Derek, I said, well, you've clearly just got more Liberal members up in Saddleworth here. And he said, what makes you say that? I said, well, because you got more claps, you got more cheers, and you just turned out more people than I could. He said, no, Sean, I don't know most of these people. And I think that just demonstrates how highly thought of Derek was up in Saddleworth. His work as a parish councillor over many years, his work as a borough councillor here on this council, his work as the mayor, his work as the mayor of Osterlands, and his work as a school governor meant that he was very known, very active in the community and very highly regarded. And he's a man who got the balance absolutely right in terms of being active on the ground and supporting local residents, but also having a political mind when he came here to speak out on behalf of those that he represented in Oldham. He made a great contribution over the many years that he spent in this chamber, and he will be missed despite our political differences. And I say that on behalf of myself and the entire Labour group. Rest in peace, Derek. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I worked with Derek during his deputy and mayoral years. During that time, we met two ladies from Nagasaki and we had 2 trips to Cleethorpes. We didn't go on the beach, I tell you. On the 1st of April 1915, a troop of men from the 3rd Manchester Regiment were bedding down in the Baptist Chapel in Cleethorpes, and a bomb was dropped from a Zeppelin, exploding directly on the chapel. 31 died, of which 13 were from Oldham, and many more were from Ashton. Every year, the Tameside British Legion go to Cleethorpes to remember those who lost their lives. We went in 2015 and 2016. You lay 3 wreaths in total, 2 in the cemetery, 1 at the memorial to the Manchesters and another 1 at the War Grave section. And then people meet up at the Naval Club, which is on the seafront, and then go to lay the final wreath at the beautiful Remembrance Arch on Cleethorpes front. Derek was really taken with the arch, and in 2016 asked me to look into us putting a plaque up to remember those who died in the chapel that night. Because of Derek's ill health, we put this on the back burner, but I think it's something that I'd like to return to because it was really important to him. But just an aside to this, in 2016, Derek was on his own as Di was ill. When we arrived at the Naval Club, Derek got out of the mayor's car and I started to lead him into the building. He turned to me and he said, no, we're going to go now. He didn't want to wait for the Tameside contingent to finish the drinks. And I said, Mr. Mayor, you have got to wait for Conrad, who was parking the car. But no, not Derek. He set off with his Zimmer, holding his Zimmer in front of him, stopping the traffic going on this busy road. And it must have been quite a sight. An elderly mayor with the mayoral chain and the Zimmer frame, followed by a not very fit lady, followed by a running mayor's attendant, and then in the other direction, another not very fit man, which is my husband, trying to catch up with us. But no, Derek being Derek, we went on our own. We got to the arch and he said, Kath, please would you lay my wreath? Which I went and did, and we stood quietly for a couple of minutes, bemused passers-by looking at what we were doing. And then we were joined by out-of-breath Conrad and out-of-breath Jed. And Derek turned to me, completely oblivious to the fact that they were heavy breathing. He said, right, thanks, Kath, I now want to go back to Di. I remember years ago someone saying to me that if you are with the mayor and someone steals the chain, you have to chase the chain. But that day, I think, I would have stayed with Derek. Thank you.
Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got to know Derek on the day I got elected as a councillor back in 2004, and I've worked closely with Derek on different committees. But what I would like to read out today, Madam Mayor, is because Derek was the deputy when I was the mayor in 2015, and obviously he became the mayor in 2016. And my daughter, Serena Atik, who was 7 at the time, wrote this poem for Derek, and I know Derek really cherished that because we had it framed and he kept it in his parlour for that year, and I've been told that he then took it home with him. So with your permission, Madam Mayor, I would just like to read that poem by Serena Atik. Peace be upon you and your family. Peace be upon your city. Peace be upon your country. Peace be around the world. May you have a peaceful life with a gentle smile. May you have all the happiness. May you become the ambassador of peace. May your message of peace shine like a shooting star. May every village, town and city receive your message of peace. With a golden handshake and sprinkle the magic of peace. In your heart, in my heart, and in everyone's heart. Peace, 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 peace be upon you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak regarding this. Madam Mayor, when I found out that he passed away, I couldn't believe it. I was coming into the Civic Centre and I bumped into Caroline, and I looked down and I thought, somebody remembers that. And I thought, can't be. And I looked, oh my God, it's Derek. And I said to you then, Caroline, can't be. And he said, I couldn't believe it, still can't believe it. And I can't believe it for one reason, Madam Mayor, is this, is that last May, just before the council, as we got to the next council meeting, he'd retired off the council. I never, ever would have thought I would be doing this today. Anyway, here goes. Let's see if the committee's interested or not. Might be to me a minute here, colleagues, but bear with me. I first met Derek formally as a councillor in 2002, and at that time, the new structure was in place, the cabinet, overview and scrutiny. And Derek used to sit on the health and social care one. He had a huge passion for that, and he was brilliant at that. The following year, I got put on the fire authority, and the following year after that, he got put on the fire authority with me. Derek, in that position, Madam Mayor, was stunning. He was outstanding. You could not have wished for a better, finer backbench councillor to be with you as an opposition member, because you didn't get that stick, you didn't get a poke in the back, that dig. I'm a Labour councillor and I'm Lib Dem and I'm going to make you look so stupid in public. He never once ever did that. Never did that. As we started going to the fire authority, when people said he could talk a lot, I'll never forget this. When I don't drive, and Derek drives, and this one day he says to me, Stephen, get your tugs on at work and I'll pick you up outside the Civic Centre and I'll drive you there. He picks me up outside here and I get in his car. And the first thing he says to me, because he knows where I work and it's dead busy at work, he goes, are you busy at work? And he goes, Derek, it's time we're being battered. And before I chance to say anything else, he tells us one of his stories. We get to Middleton Junction 2.5 miles later, he's still talking. And he's talking and talking. I said, Derek, man, come up for breath, for Christ's sake. Anyway, so he did. But when we got to the authority meetings, this is what he was good at. This is what he was brilliant at. He pulled his car up and he'd go, Steve, do you want to play it? And because we had some very difficult, dodgy budget meetings that was involving austerity and the cuts to firefighters, sometimes you just turn and say, look, forget the Lib Dem and Labour bit. What do you want to do? How do you want to play it? And he always used to say this, and he's absolutely dead right. Stephen, do you realise, he said in the position that he had, and that he had, you represented the constituents of Oldham, the citizens of Greater Manchester and the council. He was absolutely so thrilled and proud of that. He never missed anything, Madam Mayor. Right behind me was Derek. You couldn't fault the guy. And then as time went by, of course, obviously the fire authority became devolved into a fire committee, and then we went to separate ways in that regard. Can I share this with you, though, Madam Mayor? This is just directed to you just for a minute. So here's you, Madam Mayor, tonight, Harry Gaffer. For 3.5 hours, you're my boss. Absolutely fine. We'll take instructions from you and we'll do whatever you want us to do. Derek had that position, previous position, in 2016. I'll never forget this night. There's enough people in this room who will remember this. Conrad comes in. Everybody has to rise, says the dignitaries. Caroline comes in to support the meeting, so does Paul and others. And as he sat in the chair there, I looked at him and I thought, don't look so well. And all of a sudden he says to us all, colleagues, I'm really sorry, I have to keep my mobile phone on. because I'm expecting an important announcement about an appointment I've got, so please can I keep my phone on? Yeah, keep your phone on. Anyway, his phone went off a short time later, and he took his call, and this microphone was on, so he could still hear his mobile phone. He had his appointment, and that was it. Little did we know, Madam Mayor, he chaired that meeting with a broken collarbone because he'd taken a tumble a few days earlier, and he knew he had that. Who with the right mind is going to do that with a situation like that? So if anybody wants to question his credentials as a mayor, who could ever do that? Because he was in so much pain, and yet he did it, and yet he disguised it by virtue of the fact he was doing what he was doing. Anyway, colleagues, I'm going to get goosebumps now, so just bear with me while I tell you this. He's already touched the face of God, Madam Mayor. He's up there now. Went to his funeral on Monday. But just think of this. Supposing Derek, I don't believe in reincarnation, I'm not sure if it even exists, I'm not even a religious person, but just picture this. Imagine Derek sitting up there now, Madam Mayor, and he's looking down and he's thinking, boy, what a troubled world that is. God, that's hard to deal with. But imagine him sitting there and looking down and thinking, oh my word, what's he really feel like emotionally? Well, he's looking down at us from God's front porch. Thank you.
I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate Councillor Chauhan, Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care, on being awarded a OBE, Mohammed Ashraf Ali on being awarded a MBE, Ibrahim Yosef, the youngest person in the country to be honoured with a BEM for all of his charity work, and Subnum Harif Khan and Hilda Broadbent on being awarded a BEM. I am sure the Chamber will join me on those congratulations. The Leader has notified me that he wishes to make a statement. Councillor Fielding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since allegations of malpractice around historic child sexual exploitation cases first surfaced, we've taken them seriously. It is important that residents feel assured that the Council and its partners are doing everything possible to keep children safe. For that reason, I, along with Henry Giller, the Chair of the Safeguarding Partnership for Oldham, wrote to Mayor Andy Burnham requesting that an independent review into historic safeguarding in Oldham take place as part of a major piece of work looking to improve safeguarding across Greater Manchester. I'm now providing an update to councillors and the public on progress. Mayor Burnham also holds the role of Police and Crime Commissioner. In September 2017, he launched an independent assurance exercise to consider how Greater Manchester does and should respond to child sexual exploitation. Using the same methodology and approach for the Oldham Review makes it possible to utilise the same team, expertise and processes. This will make the Oldham Review as effective and as thorough as possible. As for the first stage of the Greater Manchester Review into historical CSE, the Oldham workstream will be led by Malcolm Newsom, CBE, and Gary Ridgway. Malcolm and Gary will bring their huge experience in children's social care and policing to the work, and I can assure residents that they will have the full cooperation of the Council for anything that they require. Malcolm and Gary will bring a level of knowledge, true independence and expertise that is unsurpassable, which includes looking at cases in other places like Rotherham and Manchester. The terms of reference for the review, which set out its scope, methodology, governance and resourcing, will be confirmed next week. These will be publicly available. Timelines for reporting will be determined by the review team themselves to make sure their report is conducted thoroughly, whilst also recognising the need for public clarity as soon as possible in relation to historic allegations. For the review team to conduct their work effectively, it is absolutely vital that anybody with evidence of historic failings presents these for consideration. As we have previously said, if anybody has any evidence of offences, recent or historic, or concerns about the safety of an individual or group of individuals, please contact Oldham's multi-agency safeguarding hub in the first instance. If the reviewers do not have full information, our ability to learn lessons from the past is restricted and may put young people at risk. Child sexual exploitation is abhorrent. It would be naive to think that cases of child sexual exploitation do not take place, and the Council and our partners must be equipped to prevent and detect them in all of their forms. Our systems and services are relied upon by young people to keep them safe. I am grateful to the survivors who have spoken about their experiences, and I'm confident that if the Council or our partners could have done more to protect or support them and others, then Malcolm and Gary will identify this as part of the review. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me. Item 6, petitions. There are 2 petitions for Council to note. Youth Council. I call on the Youth Councillors to present their motion as detailed in the Council agenda.
Make Your Mark is a UK-wide consultation on issues important to young people aged 11 to 18. This ballot goes out to all high schools in Oldham so that people can vote on what they feel is important in their lives and what they think the members of Youth Parliament should campaign on for the year ahead. For the last 7 years, the Youth Council have coordinated this in Oldham. Due to the devolved nature of policies and services such as the NHS and policing, this year the consultation changed and young people were given 3 different categories with five issues within each category to vote upon. The 3 categories were UK-wide issues, devolved issues and local issues. The issues for UK-wide and devolved categories were debated and chosen by the UK Youth Parliament, and the local issues were debated and chosen by the Oldham Youth Council. Young people taking part in the consultation had the opportunity to vote for 1 issue from each category. This year, approximately 11,500 young people across Oldham were involved in the consultation, which represents over 45% of Oldham's 11 to 18 population. Of the 5 issues in the UK-wide issues category, unsurprisingly, protect the environment was the top issue for Oldham's young people, with 4,515 votes. This represented nearly 40% of all votes cast and was over double the number of votes cast on any other issue. There was a similar result with the devolved issue category, with Put an End to Knife Crime gaining 4,199 votes, which was 36.7% of the votes cast, again nearly double the votes cast on any other issue. The local issue category results had a clear winner. Public transport was the top issue with 3,855 votes, 34% of the votes cast.
The Youth Council have drafted a report with a full breakdown of the Make Your Mark results, both locally and nationally, that elected members. The report also breaks down the results by school, which allow members to see how young people in your ward voted. The results of the consultation have enabled the Youth Council to prioritise our work on environment, knife crime and youth violence, and looking at public transport. We had already started work on environmental issues through a programme named Pioneers of Sustainable Hope. A charter of young people's environment rights has been developed that is out for consultation. We are creating resources to help young people be more environmentally friendly, which will be handed out at our Eco Festival as part of our Youth Summit, and we have joined your cross-party climate change group. Knife crime will also be one of the topics that we look at during our Youth Summit in February. We are also researching how other areas of the UK, such as Glasgow and Brixton, have tackled youth violence through the public health model, and hope to visit some places to see what could work here in Oldham. We feel public transport will be a difficult issue to tackle as we are not sure how much influence we can have over private companies. However, we plan to consult young people to see if it is the cost, safety concerns, reliability or a combination of all 3 that needs to be addressed.
While we have already started the hard work on addressing these issues, we realise our influence on decision makers and those responsible for making a difference may be limited. Therefore, we ask that the full Council resolve to 1. Note the results of the Make Your Mark consultation, and 2. To hold a task and finish group with the relevant Cabinet members to explore what is being done in Oldham to address these issues.
I call on Councillor Chatterton to move and Councillor Williamson to second the resolution.
I move, Madam Mayor. I welcome this, particularly as Chair of Corporate Parenting. Many of the things that have come top of the Make Your Mark survey, while I lead on it as lead for our children's services and around corporate parenting, a lot of it falls in our deputy leader's portfolio who deals with youth violence. I think she also wanted to say just a couple of things about how she plans to take it forward as well, if that's okay. But thank you for bringing it. And just one thing as well. What I think, I will pick this up at corporate parenting, but I think what would be useful, what would be a good idea going forward is each time you come forward with what you want from this year's Make the Mark, to update the Chamber on what we did on last year's Make the Mark, because surely the whole point of it is to make a mark, so what difference did that make? And did we do what you wanted? And if we didn't, then you need to hold us to account for that and come and tell all 60 of us to do a little bit better, maybe. But thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Make your mark. Well, you certainly do when you come to this chamber every single time. I'm really pleased that this year you seem to have contacted more people, more young people about the issues. You'll have to bear with me. I can't read my writing because I can't see properly, but I will try. And we need to listen to the young people. As the saying goes, they are the future. Protecting the environment is something we can all do, but young people's voices seem to resonate more, especially when you listen to Greta, or is it Sharon? I can't remember. She puts things so eloquently that you seem to understand the concerns that she's got about the environment and what we as adults should be doing. I'm pleased to see that you are also looking at the knife crime. I don't know how we can solve it, but there are so many young people that seem to want to use a knife to as a vendetta against a petty argument or something like that, whereas years ago all you used to do was punch somebody. I know it's not right, but I'm just saying that. You didn't go up and knife them, did you? I'm glad to see you'll be discussing this at your summit. I presume you mean February 2020, not 2019? Yeah, thank you. And as Amanda said, I think we really appreciate your feedback on what you do with this, because in particular for me would be the knife crime, because it is just so abhorrent to hear about young people dying through that. So thank you very much for coming here, and we really appreciate it.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Youth Council for once again for the fantastic work you've done to take the Make Your Mark survey out to schools all across Oldham. So I thank you on behalf of all the Labour Group and the Chamber. 2019 really was the year that young people's voices were heard loud and clear in politics, with a youth-led environment movement finally waking up those in power to the urgent need to tackle the climate crisis. We're very grateful to the young people of Oldham, and we're very proud of you too, who have given up their time to champion the causes that matter to them, as well as engaging with us constructively, like Amanda said, to find the solution. It is a national shame that young people across the country must continue to voice their fears about the danger of knife crime. The Youth Council's approach is absolutely the right one, consulting with your peers to truly understand what the issue means for young people in Oldham, and then looking at the best examples of how to tackle it. As we develop our community cohesion strategy, it's really important that it's informed by the work you do and the work that you've already done, and that your voice is at its heart. In the national debate on public transport, the impact it has on the lives and the opportunities of young people is often overlooked. You're right to say that in some ways your ability to influence private companies can be limited. That's one of the reasons we've been encouraging people to complete the consultation into Greater Manchester's buses that closes today. If the Mayor takes a decision to introduce bus franchising, that will introduce a much-needed element of democratic control. In the meantime, though, there is lots we can do, from facilitating meetings with the companies to engagement with Transport for Greater Manchester, to looking at our plans for how roads are set out to enable public transport to run in the way that works best for young people. As you suggest, a task and finish group will be an absolute fantastic idea, and it would give us an opportunity to look at all the issues in more detail and will be really, really valuable. And as the Cabinet Member for Social Justice Communities and the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, would be delighted to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Does the Council agree the resolution? Item 8, question time. This part of the agenda is question time, where Council will consider all questions submitted in the order received, starting with public questions. This meeting is open to the public, not a public meeting, which means that the only person with a right to speak are councillors, and other people may only speak at the invitation of the Mayor during public question time. As I said, the meeting is open to the public, and this is a statutory obligation without prejudice to any power of exclusion. But it is not an interactive meeting for the public. It is a council business meeting. Please be quiet while I'm speaking. You are? Be quiet. Public questions are not a legal requirement. However, the Council considers that questions are an important part of this meeting. I ask that respect and courtesy is shown when asking a question, and equally respect and courtesy will be shown in the response. There is a 15-minute time limit for public questions, and once this time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right of reply to answers given. If the time limit has expired and a member of the public has submitted a question which has been ruled in for consideration, the question and response will be published on the Council's website. The first question has been received by Ruth Major via email. I call on Ruth to ask her question.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council. Good evening. My name is Ruth Major, otherwise known as Rubbish Ruth. I'm an active member of the community and regularly encourage residents to partake in litter picking activities, not only in Oldham but across the country. You can see all the work I do if you follow me on Twitter at RuthMajor44 or read my blog page www.rubbishruthsrambles.co.uk. I am aware of the leader's investment in street cleaners, so please could you tell me if recruitment to the new post has now been completed? I'm also interested to know what we as a town are actively doing to engage schools, businesses and commerce in the reduction of littering and in the encouragement of people to love where they live. Thank you.
I call on Councillor Raymond to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ruth, for the question, and can I thank you for your fantastic campaign and services to the community. While we have invested to increase the amount of street cleaning in the borough, Oldham will only be clean and tidy with the support and efforts of residents, and you represent the very best of us in that regard. I can confirm that all the appointments have now been made with the additional funding put into street cleaning, and we continue to work with the local schools on a variety of campaigns, often supported by the work of local communities which varies in each of the local districts. For a more detailed update in each area and how best to engage with local activity, you are encouraged to contact the local district offices. A full list is available on the Council's website. Thank you.
The next question has been submitted by Maureen Aldred via email. Maureen's not here, so I will read her question. My husband and I took our grandchildren to the Oldham Christmas lights switch on, and I just want to say what a fantastic event it was. It was well organised, and the grandchildren particularly enjoyed Hey Dougie from CBeebies. Despite the cuts and the criticism, which I am sure you must get from some quarters for spending money on this, I want to praise the Council for continuing to run this event. It is great for families, and of course it is free. I hope that you will continue to run these types of events, and wonder if you could tell us what other free council organised events we have to look forward to over the coming months. I call on Councillor Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this falls in part of my brief as the culture element, which I've only held since May, and it is probably the nicest part because it means that I get to answer questions like this. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Mrs Aldred for her great feedback on the Christmas light switch on. If I may say so, there's no better place to be at Christmas than in Oldham. With a number of free, high-quality events lined up across the festive season, including Santa's Reindeer Parade, Oldham's Christmas light switch on, and Brass Monkeys, there's no shortage of brilliant entertainment to enjoy, and you don't have to spend a penny. To find out what's taking place in your local area, you can download the latest version of Our Family Life magazine, which outlines all of the key dates for local events from Christmas light switch-ons, school holiday activities, to the latest pantomime and even a Santa Dash. We've covered it all. Download your copy of Family Life from Oldham Council's website. Looking forward to 2020, some of the free event highlights will be: in February, we'll see Oldham in a new light as 3 of the town centre's iconic venues play host to the borough's late night arts festival, Illuminate, followed by Accelerate in May, part of the UK's only festival of art performance dedicated to transport, travel and motion, Spare Parts. Oldham Pride in July is a community-led day of celebration, including a parade and participatory programme. Whilst Oldham Histories Festival in September will be the largest heritage festival in Greater Manchester, including Heritage Open Days and a series of other events. We also have the Big Bang Festival of Fire in November to mark Bonfire Night with fire drawing, live performances and a fantastic fireworks display. And there are loads of free activities and exhibitions at Gallery Oldham and Oldham Libraries. Or take a look at our visitor website, visitoldham.com, for more inspiration of things to do, many of which, like the one that Mrs Aldred referred to, are free. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question has been submitted by Huma Bibi via email. Not here. I'll read the question. The Council has faced almost a decade of cuts since 2010 under governments run by the Conservatives. Does the Cabinet Member for Finance expect this new government to be any different and allow Oldham Council's financial position to improve? I call on Councillor Jabbar to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Huma for the question. The Provisional Local Government Finance Settlement was notified to the Council on 20th of December 2019. It advised the Council of major grant funding allocation for the financial year 2021, which will enable the budget for the 2021 to be finalised. It confirmed that the Government had halted the continuing reduction in government funding experienced since 2020. Instead, general grant funding has been uplifted for inflation, and other major grants have been continued at 2019-2020 value. Additional funding has been allocated for social care. This is much better than what has been expected initially. However, Madam Mayor, we have to remember that during the austerity period, £208 million has been taken out of the council budget. And as we stand now, despite this additional funding, there is major funding shortage for adult social care, for there is deficit in the dedicated school grant fund, and also for things like home-to-school transport. Now, when this priority began, local government sector was the first to face the cuts. And I'm hoping when the Chancellor on the 11th of March actually sets the new budget, then he gives us extra money for key services that we provide locally. I just want to give you one piece of information before I sit down. We lost 1/3 of our entire workforce during austerity, and we continue to provide broadly the same level of service, in some area, greater services than we did previously, in particular in adult social care and children's social care. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question has been submitted by Mark Rooney via email. The council leader posted on Facebook that he has made a bid to Greater Manchester for money from the Housing Investment Loans Fund to support residential developments in Oldham Town Centre. He said that this could offset green belt allocations in the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. Is the leader confident that there is a market for residential property in the Oldham Town Centre? Councillor Feeling to respond.
I was waiting to be invited. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Mr Rooney for his question. I can inform members of the public that the Council approved a refreshed vision for the town centre in June of last year, whereby we create a town centre where people would want to live. The vision comprises a number of priority areas, and work on these are well underway. Public realm improvements in the town centre will begin this summer. We have a nighttime economy task force which is looking at how we improve the leisure offer in Oldham Town Centre. Work on refurbishing the former library on Union Street into the new Heritage and Arts Centre will start in the spring, and we are continuing to work with the Coliseum and Arts Council to bring forward plans for a new performance space in the town. I'm confident that these improvements, together with emerging plans for Tommyfield Market, will help to transform our town centre and create an attractive place to visit, work and live. Further announcements on these and other proposals will be forthcoming in the next few weeks. So in short, in response to Mr Rooney's question, do I think that there is a market for residential property in the town centre? If not at the moment, I certainly believe that there will be. And if, as I suspect, Mr Rooney is one of those who has an interest in the Greenbelt allocations proposed to be made under the GMSF, then I would invite him to keep his eyes peeled for announcements that will come out over the next few weeks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Deborah Barrett via email. I call on Deborah to ask the question.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be able to ask my question this time, unlike last time. I am still waiting for an answer on that one, actually. But there you go. Right, my question is to you, Mr Sean Fielding, Leader of the Council. Can the Council tell the people of Oldham why they have sold land at under market value to communities who have or did not pay for nearly 20 years, like with Oldham Central Mosque, and not pay 1 penny in interest in all that time? And can the Council tell the people of Oldham why they sold Glodic Baths during the time of Purdah when the bidding system had already closed? And can the Council tell the people of Oldham who allowed the land to be sold for yet another place of worship on Copsrill Road when the land could have been used to build much needed homes that are needed in Oldham? Thank you.
Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to Mrs Barrett for a question. Mrs Barrett is referring to 3 separate land transactions, and I will answer this question in relation to each of these land sales separately. The first was Oldham Central Masjid and Mosque. In respect of the sale of land to Oldham Central Masjid and Mosque, this was agreed by the Council back in 1995 at a price below market value. In accordance with the agreed procedure for selling land at undervalue, the consent of the Secretary of State, which at the time was the Secretary of State for Environment, was sought, and this was agreed in August 1997. The sale of this land at under value was therefore subject to independent scrutiny by both central government and also followed due process as required. On Glodick Baths, a full response has already been given to an FOI request submitted, and the response has been published in the public domain. The property was declared surplus on the 17th of November 2015, and a tender exercise undertaken as per the Land and Property Protocols. Cabinet agreed to this sale at its meeting on the 25th of January 2016, and the transaction was then progressed by officers, resulting in the sale and the Council receiving the full amount of the agreed sale price. The decision by the Cabinet to agree to sell this surplus asset was not in the purdah period, as this did not begin until the 23rd of March 2016. Finally, the disposal of the former Copster Hill Road depot. The Council undertook a restricted tender exercise of interested parties to sell this site, including a housing provider. The outcome of this was considered by Cabinet at its meeting on the 26th of February 2018. At this stage, as the transaction is not yet complete, I cannot be specific about the price submitted by the successful bidder. However, the Council accepted the most economically advantageous, and that means officers speak for highest, offer, and has to date received the stage payments expected from the sale of this land. The transaction again, like the other two, followed the Council's land and property protocols. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question has been submitted by Shirley Blower via email. No. I have heard talk of a new secondary school in Oldham, possibly being run by Blue Coat. If this is true, I think it would provide more choice for parents. Is it true, and if so, would it be open in time for my daughter, who is in Year 3, to attend there? I call on Councillor Mushtaq to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council is working with the Cranmer Trust.
Excuse me, can you be quiet, please? You have had your time to speak. Please don't be rude and allow. You are interrupting. Do you want to? Yeah? Yeah.
So, getting back to the question, I thank Shirley Blower for the question. The Council is working with the Cranmer Trust, who have made a successful bid to the ESFA to build a free school in Oldham. The Cranmer Trust run the current Blue Coat. Preparations are still early, but it is anticipated the new school may be ready for opening by September 2022. If this timing remains on track, this would mean that your child in Year 3 would be eligible to apply for a place at the new school. The new Blue Coat School will be a significant addition to Oldham, providing more places for Oldham children to gain an excellent education and an excellent start in life. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, we have run out of time for public questions. We move to 8B, Leader and Cabinet question time. The next part of this section is questions to Leader and Cabinet with a time limit of 30 minutes. I have advice notice of questions. The Deputy Leader of the main opposition will ask his question. Councillor Gloucester.
Madam Mayor, can I just wait while these people leave? Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be watching Coronation Street on catch-up later. So, I hope that all members...
Excuse me, Warren, please be quiet. Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
I hope that all members present will agree that arguing and debating for green policy at a local level makes all the difference when we take the challenge to central government. The Liberal Democrats bringing the issue of climate change to council sets us on the right track, but it does not take us all the way. The threat of climate change can be seen globally and locally as our weather becomes increasingly unpredictable, although some here might chuckle that Oldham weather has always been unpredictable. In all seriousness though, it's one thing declaring a climate change emergency, but we must follow this through. We are part of this world, and if we fail to acknowledge it, we fail in every other purpose we strive towards. We must act on the declaration and make headway towards achieving an environmentally friendly Oldham Borough. The environmental charity Friends of the Earth has released a 50-point plan for councils. This is to help authorities like Oldham enact on our emergency climate change declaration. As councillors, we campaign through council to make our voice heard by the UK government. I will not sound off every single point of the plan here tonight, but I do ask the leader if he will prescribe this borough to the Friends of the Earth 50-point climate action plan so that officers and members can be made best aware of how to tackle the issue of climate change in Oldham Borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition for his question. May I, on behalf of the Labour Group, wish the Leader of the Opposition a speedy recovery. Councillor Gloucester is correct that a Liberal Democrat motion saw this council declare a climate emergency some meetings ago, but prior to that, it was the Labour Group that brought forward the motion to establish a Green New Deal. Declaring a climate emergency is simply not enough. It is the actions that follow that will determine how we actually tackle the climate emergency, and it is the Labour Group on this council that put forward those actions, and in time we'll be declaring our Green New Deal and announcing the measures that we intend to take on energy efficiency, on improving recycling rates, on reducing the consumption of plastics and tackling climate change generally. I welcome the support from the opposition on this matter. It is incredibly important and has been brought home particularly by the recent bushfires in Australia, which many of us have been shocked by observing on the television. And I am keen that this council is at the forefront of plans in local government to tackling the climate emergency. And when our Green New Deal is published, we will be just that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Sean. Right, for my second question. In October 2019, it was revealed that Interserve will receive £13 million of Oldham Council money to redevelop Oldham's Cultural Arts Centre. Culture is incredibly important. It defines who we are and our civilisation. Teaching old and young about our local worth arms our economy and society with the confidence to do great deeds themselves. A £13 million scheme must be incredibly complex to finance, but I wonder if this council has made any effort to find a firm locally that could have done the same as Interserve. For members that do not know, Interserve is a firm based in Reading. How on earth are we keeping the money in Oldham by spending millions of pounds down south? The point is that we're not spending locally. Although there will be a cultural return on the project, the workers of Oldham Borough will see little economic benefit. I find it highly unlikely that this council will reverse such a large contractual decision with Interserve. It's a shame we cannot now procure a local firm to envision the development of the Heritage and Arts Centre. Considering this, I must ask what efforts will be made by the recently established Cultural Governance Board. Will these efforts be concentrated on finding local business and contractors from Oldham Borough to work on the project throughout its duration? We must procure locally if we are to improve locally. Thank you.
Councillor Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Gloucester for giving me the opportunity to highlight the incredible Heritage and Arts Centre that we are still going ahead with and will be an incredible cultural asset for this town. When we announce, this is something of a teaser for the ambitious regeneration plans that will be forthcoming over the next few weeks around Oldham Town Centre, and I have been absolutely vocal in saying how key cultural assets will be in our ambitions for Oldham, both through the establishment of our nighttime economy, through our continued commitment to the Oldham Coliseum and supporting our music service when other local authorities have cut it. Councillor Gloucester is absolutely correct that we should be spending as much money as possible within the borough. We want to create local jobs, we want to create local well-paid jobs, we want to use local firms. Now, of course, as I'm sure he is aware, the process to let a contract to somebody to develop our Heritage and Arts Centre is part of a predetermined tender process. However, he will be pleased to note that within the Labour Party's manifesto for the local elections of May just gone, it was our commitment to significantly increase the amount of money that we spend locally within Oldham, and our target is for 60%. We already compare very favourably in terms of spending money within the boundaries of our borough to other neighbours across Greater Manchester and certainly across the country, even those which have something of a high profile and perhaps sell that better than we do. But I am proud of the amount of money that we keep within the boundaries of the borough of Oldham, sustaining those local jobs and making sure that money goes into the pockets of local people. Where we can do more, we will. And if we can get it to 100% of money being spent locally, then I will be with you there to try and reach that target. But sometimes it's not entirely possible. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I call on Councillor Hudson to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Troubled Families programme is to receive a further 165 million cash boost from the government to continue for a further year. The fund was launched by David Cameron in 2012 to target families with multiple complex social and health issues. This programme has proved a success in transforming lives and relieving the burden on public services. It was revamped in 2015 with the aim of helping 400,000 families by 2020. About £920 million has been spent since then, averaging about £157.6 million per year, with the councils being paid on the basis of the results in helping the most vulnerable families. I would like to ask, Madam Mayor, has this authority made any claims on this fund to date?
Thank you. I call on the leader to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the announcement of the Troubled Families programme initially, I personally object to the label of troubled families. I think it is degrading. Yeah. I don't think that it is something that we should be using. And as in terms of the number of families that have complex needs that need to be addressed with the support of some public money, the number of families who have those complex needs has significantly increased in the time that we have had a Conservative government that has imposed austerity on our council and on our public services more generally. Whilst any money to support the financial position of this council is welcome, a programme labelled Troubled Families with what amounts to simply crumbs from the table compared to the amount of money that has been slashed from local government budgets who could have taken action up front to prevent many of these families getting into the position that they have is insulting. And so, whilst we will make bids to funding pots that will make our financial position more stable and allow us to help the people that we need to help, what we really need is a proper local government settlement that funds local authorities and public services properly so that we can help those who truly need it in our society. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I still haven't had an answer. Have this authority made any claims on this fund to date? Does that mean no? Does that mean no? I mean, I know in some people's view it might not be right, but that isn't what my question was about. My question was clearly to ask, has the authority made any claims? Is the answer no from that?
As I stated in the response to my question, this council bids for all sorts of money to help secure our financial position and allow us to discharge our duties to the most vulnerable. So I suppose that was a roundabout way of saying yeah.
How many? I can't believe the officers paid what they are. Haven't supplied the answers to this, and I think I should get the answer in writing.
I'm certain that with advance notice of the question we could have got the exact figure down to the pennies. So if Councillor Hudson wants an accurate answer in the way that he is now requested, then he should provide his question in advance so that we can get that information for it.
I wonder what the people of Oldham will think about that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Non-driving staff members of private hire companies and taxi companies deal with personal and sensitive information. Can the Cabinet Member for Social Justice and Communities confirm whether it is a requirement of these staff to be trained in GDPR and DBS checked on a regular basis?
Thank you. Councillor Shah to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Peter Davis, for your question. I can advise that private hire operators who run the companies have already received training on GDPR, and the council supplied that last year. It's for them to implement that knowledge and convey it to their staff. In terms of staff DBS checks, this is currently being implemented by our licensing team and will be rolled out in the spring. I can also say that the staff DBS checks, staff recruitment and GDPR policies are included in the Greater Manchester Minimum Licensing Standards, which is to be consulted upon in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Shuttleworth to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a funding question in advance. The government has handed more than 100 councils across England a share of around £4 million to crack down on criminal landlords and letting agents. Has Oldham received any of this funding? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Roberts to respond.
Thank Councillor Shuttleworth for his question. The government has announced a number of one-off short-term funding opportunities which sound more impressive than they are in reality, and this is one of those schemes. The government announced a £3.8 million pot for tackling rogue landlords across the country on the 1st of November 2019, with a very tight closing date for applications of the 1st of December 2019. The funding has to be spent by the 31st of March 2020, that's 3 months, and can't be used for permanent staffing roles, so would not have helped our main priority of inspecting people's homes and taking action where necessary, including prosecution. Given competing priorities for a team, which like many council services is under great pressure, a decision was taken to focus on the next phase of private rented sector consultation that is due to start in the middle of January 2020. This consultation will explore the opportunity to continue with the good work surrounding the selective licensing scheme in some neighbourhoods within the borough, and this approach is something that is more sustainable over a longer timescale. So in short, we didn't really have the capacity to bid. It wasn't money that was just going to be given out. We had to write a bid. At the risk of echoing what the leader has just said, what the council needs is a long-term revenue funding to enable us to provide effective and quality public services, not stopgap and one-off funding announcements like this.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Suran to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and Happy New Year to everybody. In recent years, there's been a huge increase in the number of people driving, particularly in the coldest area, as it leads to the main town centre, colleges, and has crucial links to the motorway. With many drivers using the big Tesco roundabout off Chaddington Way and Featherstone Road, local people have asked what will be done to reduce road traffic accidents and to make it safe for all drivers. For example, during rush hour traffic, cars on Chaddington Way are usually backed up all the way to Rochdale Road, making it difficult for residents to cross at safe zebra crossings or for drivers to turn onto side streets. And cars coming down Featherstone Road near the hospital and also the bypass form long queues, causing huge risks for those at the giveaway with oncoming cars approaching at great speed. Does the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood agree with me that it's time traffic lights are installed at this busy roundabout for the safety of both local residents and drivers? Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Raymond to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Ruji Surjan for asking that question? The Council's traffic and road safety and officers are already working closely with colleagues at Transport for Greater Manchester into the viability of introducing traffic signals at the Featherstone Road roundabout to ease congestions, particularly at busy periods. In recent years, changes were made to the road markings on the roundabout that resulted in significant improvements to road safety and ultimately far fewer road traffic injury collisions at the junction. This is closely monitored and reflected in the Greater Manchester's Police's accident figures. It is also worth noting, Madam Mayor, that the road safety measures, including zebra crossings and road humps along Featherstone Road, continue to contribute to the road safety of the area since their introduction a number of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a question from the Liberal Democrat Group member? Councillor Harkness.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd first like to thank... Right, okay, that's... okay, well, I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for Highways for his answer to my question relating to road safety in Dobcross and Delph last time, and I hope he'll continue to work on that. But I hope he'll welcome the hard work that the Dobcross community have been doing on this issue, and he'll look carefully at these petitions which are in the Green Book tonight to form that, and hopefully we will get some progress on that. On another issue relating to highways, I want to just turn to a bit on gritting. Well, the Cabinet Member will be aware about Thurston Clough Road in my ward is closed and will be for some time. And this is quite a huge inconvenience to residents on the outskirts of Delph and Scouthead. It's with regret, though, that the Council have chosen to suspend gritting around this area due to the closure of this road. It's also disappointing that this has been done without consultation with ward councillors. Will the Cabinet Member look again at supporting these residents and reinstating the gritting in this area so that they do not become isolated in the event of bad weather? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Councillor, for bringing this to my attention. I will most certainly have a look into this issue and try to establish why the gritting has been suspended, and if possible, we will have that reinstated, and I'll make sure that the local councillors are actually involved in those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Hume to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and also echo what Garth said about the work being done in Dobcross, and I'm really glad that there is progress being made on making that bridge safer, so I'm really glad that that's happening. I'm just also really want to welcome the allocation of funding from the new Local Improvement Fund to tackle speeding in Denshaw and increase safety outside the school there. It's an issue of concern for many of the residents there, and one that I know our newly returned local MP has been doing a lot of work to try and sort out. Can the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods confirm the timescale for when the vital work will be completed?
Thank you, Councillor Hume, for your question. It is hoped that the measures could be introduced during this financial year, likely towards the end of March. The process will begin with the residents' consultation of the proposals, followed by the compilation of the TMU report that summarises the initial consultation phase with key stakeholders, that is emergency services, public transport, ward councillors and local residents. On completion, the TMU report will form the basis of subsequent ModGov report. This document includes the outcomes of the consultation process, detailed estimates and comments from both the legal and the finance heads, and the necessary to acquire schemes approval and authority to proceed with the works, including all statutory advertising of the associated road humps, notices, etc. Once the report has been approved, the statutory advertising of the proposals can begin, which takes 28 days to complete. And once all that is done, the actual construction works on site should take no more than a week or so. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Leach to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the decision to move to the new process of using development funding via the Local Investment Fund and the decision to grant the funds for improvement of Lees Village. I want to commend the work of the active Lees, Springhead and Groton Business Hub, as well as council district officers who've made this a practical project with such excellent prospects for success. Could the Cabinet member please confirm the arrangements for implementing the improvement work?
Councillor Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think it's great that we're having so many questions about successful local improvement fund bids tonight, which highlights how it was a good decision to instigate that fund in the first place. But specifically on the Lees bid, in advance of work commencing, the district team, with the support of environmental services, will engage with surrounding properties and stakeholders to discuss these and potential future uses of the space surrounding the library. The proposals and designs set out within the lift project will also be shared to ensure that the layout appeals to visitors, businesses and residents, and that any positive suggestions can be included where possible. Some elements of the scheme are designed to be flexible, meaning that there can be future changes to the layout should they be required. The work will be implemented with environmental services acting as main contractor, with some aspects potentially being carried out by subcontractors. There will be lead-in times for street furniture, which will be factored into the scheduling. A design meeting will be held within the next couple of weeks in order to develop the detail of the programme moving forward. It is anticipated that this work will also act as a catalyst for discussions with private landowners in the village, and that there will be scope for further improvements to take place in due course too. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Pythian to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Royton has recently concluded what will now be round one of a bidding process for match funding of shopfront improvements on the Middleton Road and Rochdale Road areas of the town centre. A second round will now be made available by an additional £25,000 from the Local Improvement Fund. This is helping to deliver the long-standing commitment of this Labour Council to regeneration of the Royton Town Centre following the opening of the Leisure Centre and the Health and Wellbeing Centre and inclusion of Royton in the GM Mayor's Town Centre Challenge. Could the relevant Cabinet member comment on the difference this investment will make to Royton? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to point out on this question that the bid for £25,000 that Royton has received for this project is more than the combined capital funding that was previously held by the two Royton wards, which of course was only £20,000. So out of this one project, and I know there have been other successful projects in that district, out of this one project, Royton has benefited more than it could have possibly have ever done under the old arrangements. But along with our ambitious programme for the development of Oldham Town Centre, this council is also committed to investing in improvements in our districts. Indeed, this was the idea behind the instigation of the Local Improvement Fund. The councillors in Royton have been extremely proactive in supporting the recent Business Improvement Grant Scheme for independent businesses along Middleton Road and Rochdale Road. This has now been matched with an additional £25,000 from the Local Improvement Fund, which will enable the scheme to be expanded. This investment, alongside the inclusion of Royton in the Greater Manchester Mayor's Town Centre Challenge and investment in Royton Town Hall, will make real differences for the community of Royton. It will bring jobs and trade opportunities for local people, attracting new customers to Royton, spending money locally and showing it is a well looked after area with inward investment. Changes in shopping habits and the arrival of national brands and supermarket chains to our district centres provide a wider choice for residents, so it is essential that we support our independent traders in order to retain their local unique distinctiveness. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have a question from the Liberal Democrat group member?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's interesting to hear the leader say how well Royton has done out of the Local Improvement Fund and how much they've gained in excess of what they would have gained under the old area scheme. However, if I look at my ward, Shaw Ward, we've actually received nothing. Zero, zilch. This is despite a very well evidenced application which included a survey of the local youth who want improvements to the skateboard park. So I'd simply ask the leader how we can assure the young people of Shaw in particular when the skateboard park will be improved now that local councillors are no longer able to fund such a scheme. Thank you.
Councillor Fielding to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I'm sure Councillor Gloucester is well aware, but those watching this meeting will not be, the size of the bid that was placed to the Local Improvement Fund for Shaw Skate Park was £250,000. £250,000. Now, I know that there was no upper limit on bids, but I think that that was an ambitious level of funding to expect from the Local Improvement Fund in the first round. That said, of course, Councillor Gloucester makes reference to the previous arrangements under the district. Only, of course, £10,000 per ward of capital available to spend on capital projects. £10,000 is even less than the pot that they could have bid into for the £250,000 that they wanted to achieve. So it is infinitely more possible under the Local Improvement Fund that Shaw will get its skate park than it ever would have been had we retained district executive committees. Councillor Gloucester will be pleased to know that not all of the money from the first round of the Local Improvement Fund was allocated, and so there is around £100,000 remaining, and there will be a mini bidding round this year to allow projects which were unsuccessful and other projects that people might not have submitted the first time round to come forward for consideration. I would encourage Councillor Gloucester and his colleagues in Shaw to make a bid, but to be realistic about the amount of money that they expect to come out of the Local Improvement Fund, bearing in mind that the £500,000 pot that was originally set aside is for the entire borough. I do think before I sit down I need to address the point that was insinuated at the establishment of the Local Improvement Fund, that because the committee were made up of myself, Councillor Jabbar and Councillor Shah, that this fund would favour areas which have Labour councillors. If you look at the spread of spending across the borough, you will see that there is significant investment in Saddleworth, that Crompton has had a successful project, and so the idea that this is only to favour projects in Labour wards is simply not true. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, unfortunately we're running out of time and I've got one more question. I call on Councillor Marie Bashforth to ask her question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cabinet has resolved that Oldham Council pledged to become homeless friendly. This and the decision to take housing option services back in-house to me is very welcome news. Can the Cabinet member responsible explain the homeless friendly culture and how can this be adopted and implemented by the Council? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome this opportunity to explain some of the work that's been done by Councillor Chauhan in the Homeless Friendly work that he has set up. So Homeless Friendly is a registered charity that was founded in 2017 as part of a not-for-profit social enterprise, Beacon GP Care. It asks that services examine the way they conduct their business and pledge to make them accessible to homeless people. Their aim is to promote a cultural shift in how homeless people are viewed and treated. For example, offering understanding and flexibility in terms of their difficult circumstances. So Oldham Council agreed at a recent Cabinet meeting to adopt accreditation under the Homeless Friendly scheme, and we have pledged to help to meet the needs of homeless people, to speak to homeless people with understanding and compassion, to examine our policies and procedures to ensure they are homeless friendly, to train our staff in the needs of homeless people, and to work with our partners to include and encourage them to care for the homeless, and to act as a hub for our community in our efforts, collective efforts to help the homeless. So I won't give a lengthy response to this, but just to note that I also answered a question fairly recently about Real Change Oldham and what that can do to support it. And I will continue. So Real Change Oldham is a community initiative that is supported by the council, which seeks to raise money to offer practical support to homeless people to enable them to move into homes and jobs. And it's a really practical thing that we can do to help. And I would ask that people continue to support Real Change Oldham in the work that they do so that we can continue to provide that kind of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. We now move on to 8C. The next part of this section is questions on Cabinet minutes. I call on Councillor Fielding to move and Councillor Shah to second. That Council notes the minutes of the Cabinet as circulated.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Do any members who are not Cabinet members wish to ask a question on the Cabinet minutes?
Sure, it's just cold now. Thank you. Sorry, I thought someone had his hand up. Oh. I'll just find it because I had it stuck on the page. Being pages today. It's in regards to, I'll find it, there we are. It's in regards to Cabinet minutes from item 9 on the 18th of the 11th, 2019. And that's page 38, sorry, to say there. And it's regarding homelessness friendly with housing option who used to have their surgeries in each of our districts now being returned to in-house to the council. Can the relevant cabinet member assure that homelessness without means of travel can still fully access the service without the ability of said travel? Thank you.
That's me. Yeah, that's me. Thank you. So we are undertaking a review of the way that the housing option service is delivered now that it's been in operation with the council for about 6 months, and I will make sure that that is one of the issues that's taken into account when we look at the staffing structure and how the service will be delivered in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Almondini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 32, so you've all got time to get there. Cabinet minutes, item 7, which is the Saddleworth School update. We've all had a moment. I'd like to welcome the work that is going on to ensure that we have a Saddleworth School that is of a decent standard, because that is not what we currently have, and I do welcome the additional funding that is going in. We do have a question, however. We've been notified as local councillors of work being initiated before full licences are in place on bat roosts. Whether you have a specific answer on that at the moment, if you do, that would be great. If not, if we could have an answer in due time. But I would just like to ask what engagement is going on between the council and local residents to manage this process, to ensure that their concerns are held and responded to, and just to, for those residents in the area who are concerned, just to go through what oversight is in place to ensure that this sort of thing shouldn't happen on this or any other developments. Thank you.
Could the appropriate cabinet member respond?
Right. Thank you. I'm aware of the issue about bats, and it's something that I will have an answer on later in the week, and I will let you know. The issue about how residents will be consulted, kept up to date. This is something that I have already raised. I mean, clearly there is a distinction between the council's responsibilities in this area in terms of its planning powers, and then the responsibility that the constructors have once work has started. And I have asked that when building work is about to begin, that there is another process of making sure that local residents understand what the building process will be, and there will be clear indication on the council's website who should be contacted about which aspect of the work. So there will be some highways work going on, which will clearly be us. The actual construction work will be the construction company. But it will be clear indications of who should be contacted and approached about what, should residents have any issues.
Thank you. Councillor Gloucester.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Still on the Cabinet minutes, page 38, agenda item 10, charging scheme for planning proposals. Yep, I've read it, I understand it, and I understand the reasons behind why we want to charge for pre-planning advice because of the amount of work that's taking place within the planning department at the moment. What I would say is, once we start charging for this pre-planning advice, do we intend to recruit additional staff to do pre-planning advice, or will we just be receiving money for the same staff and the same overwork service that they're currently running?
Thank you. Could the appropriate Cabinet member respond?
Thank you. So we don't yet have any clear indication of what the level of income will be. Clearly we know how many planning applications we've had, and if we continue to have the same number of planning applications inquiries, you can do a projection. But as we actually haven't run the scheme yet, we're not clear what the level of income will be. The intention is that the income will be used to support the planning service, which the interim director of planning, who of course has come from kind of outside the council and has an independent view, is that the view is not staffed to the level to provide an effective service given the volume of applications that we have. So that is something that we will be looking at. It is the case that a lot of the kind of advice that we will be charging for, which many of our neighbours charge for already, we're not doing anything any different than most other local authorities do, has been advice that officers have been giving to people. So it's the sense that the workload, we're not quite sure what's going to happen with the workload and the income, but that is something that we'll look at once we've got a clearer picture of how it works in practice.
Thank you. I think that's it, isn't it? Right. The final part of this section is questions on joint arrangements and partnerships. I call on the spokespersons to move the minutes. Greater Manchester Waste and Recycling Committee, Councillor Torr. Oldham Leadership Board.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Chauhan. Police and Crime Panel, Councillor Williams.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Greater Manchester Combined Authority, Councillor Fielding.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Greater Manchester Transport Committee, Councillor. It's no name.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have a question on the minutes? Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I take this opportunity to thank our OMBC staff and partners who kept the lights switched on over our Christmas period and kept our essential services running over the festive time. We appreciate everything you do, and I'm sure the leader will join me in thanking them and other members. But my question is to do with agenda item 8D, GMCA, page 43, mainly on page 44, under the section WRC 19/27. This is something that I've raised with the Director for Environmental Services before, and I'd just like some clarification, because I'm mindful there's been some stuff in the media about this. And when I first read it, alarm bells rang for me. And it's to do with the amount of journeys and trips you can do to the tip. And in the report it says 1 week, one visit per week. And I'd just like some clarification, because sometimes our residents, and certainly myself, might go to the tip 3 times a week. So what I'm interested in is how the mechanics will work of it. So for example, when I've gone to Outright Street, it'll come up with my reg plate, that's fine. So if I go in again in the same week, how will it happen? What will actually happen? So will somebody come out, check that I'm not trade waste, and then they'll look in my car, you're not trade, happy days, because I'm sure that's what it's to combat, or will you turn me away? So I'd just like some clarification on the actual mechanics of how it will happen. So have I blown it, you know, till the next week or whatever? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I ask the relevant member to respond to the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would normally be Councillor Raymond or Councillor Tor, but I've given this response so many times in the last few weeks, and technically it came to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority as well, so it was a decision that I was party to. You've not blown it for that week if you go once. The simple answer is it's on average once per week. So like you, myself and Sophie cleaned out our loft a few weeks ago. We went 3 times in 1 day. That is not a problem. It's only a problem if you then go more than 52 times in total in the year. Your number plate is flagged up as you go in, and even if you do go 52 times in a year, it doesn't mean you can't go any more. It just means that you'll be flagged up as an excessive user and you will have your vehicle checked. The reason for this decision is that there has been abuse of the system. Commercial operations have been taking place to tip waste at municipal recycling facilities. This change brings us into line with other parts of the country, and because we are not consistent with places like West Yorkshire and Cheshire and Lancashire, there is evidence that people have been coming across the border to the tips that are on the border of Greater Manchester because our system is more lax than theirs was. Our system was more lax than theirs is. So I would anticipate that with that clarification, the vast majority of residents should have nothing to be concerned about. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Alamandini? You put your hand up. No, you didn't? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a question regarding Health and Wellbeing Board, page 58, item 11, GM Common Standard and Population Health Update, paragraph 2. You ready? Yeah. Can the relevant cabinet ready? Yeah, let's go. Can the relevant cabinet member explain what forms of weight strategies and what type of review would the Weight Management Commission entail, so that this council can understand what message would then follow to help this borough become a healthier place to live? Thank you.
Can the relevant member respond?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of confusion here because I'm chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, but I'm sitting up here. So, I mean, do you want to take that? Obviously, this is going back a bit, and I can't just remember off the top of my head what each of the separate sections are that are covered by this. But I can get that information to you. But it is to ensure that things of public health interest, such as obesity, overweight, smoking, teenage pregnancy, quite a raft of things, that across Greater Manchester we are attaining similar standards. It's a watch really, and Oldham Health and Wellbeing Board has highlighted some of those to tackle at a time. So I can get you more detail on that within the next week, if that's okay.
Please, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
You're welcome.
Just to add, I just feel really proud because I managed to lose a little bit of weight. So I thought I would take this opportunity to stand up saying, yeah, you can lose weight. Councillor Harrison is absolutely right. We're doing a number of things, starting from prevention, because we know if we really want to keep our children and our future generations happy and healthy, we need to start working from the schools. So working with the schools, we have a health champions in the school. We have a number of NHS health check, which we launched a few months ago as an Oldham health check, which again concentrates on your weight. But then, if you tackle the obesity issue, and if you are thinking to have a specialist service, then no service is going to be enough. It's such a big issue. It's working with prevention, it's working with the communities, it's working with your local community groups, and then for a certain group, you have opportunities to get them referred to specialist services, which again we at the moment designing and redesigning together to make sure they are appropriate for our need and our community needs.
Yeah, just say that it's not compulsory for Oldham to be part of this common standards thing. It's a decision that Oldham Health and Wellbeing Board made, and it is to ensure, you know, that we are tackling these things at a good level.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Bashforth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and apologies for being late. Just had a bit of a disaster at work. Yeah, it's the Greater Manchester Combined Authority minutes, page 82 and 83. It's really good to see that Greater Manchester have adopted the Armed Forces Covenant, and in the resolved items, bullet point 8 says that the change in housing policy by Oldham Council to assist veterans be rehoused quickly. Can I just ask, is that on its way to being implemented now in our new housing options, in-house options? It's really good news if it is. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, it's been adopted as policy, so it should be happening.
Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is page 96. It's the minutes of the Greater Manchester Transport Committee, and it's in regards to something my dad always liked to talk about, a train station in Diggle, and I was hoping that the member who was there could sort of expand on what the plans are there. Cheers.
Councillor Fielding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And the train station in Diggle was one of my pledges to campaign for in the election in 2011. I'm not sure, I don't hold a grudge, and I still campaigned for it, even though I came last in that election. But it was me that raised the issue of the Diggle station at the Transport for Greater Manchester Committee on that day. And it's because it wasn't represented in the 2040 master plan. I know that the Diggle station has been an ambition of people in Saddleworth for a long time. And it's fair to say that of all of the parts of our borough, Saddleworth is one of the most chronically underserved in terms of public transport links. And despite being a councillor from Failsworth, it is often issues from Saddleworth that I find myself raising most frequently when I go down to the Transport for Greater Manchester Committee. It's particularly important that we secure a station for Diggle, given that the bus service that used to run to Diggle Turning Circle was withdrawn a number of years ago, and so there is now no public transport link to Diggle in the vicinity of the Diggle Hotel, as I understand it. So I'll continue to campaign for the inclusion of a halt at Diggle in the master plan that TFGM have drawn up, and hopefully we will secure that additional station so that people from Diggle can get about more easily on public transport. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's on the Oldham Leadership Board, page 54, the Poverty Truth Commission. I'm really pleased that we're going to be doing this. There's been 2 local Poverty Truth Commissions in Salford and in Leeds, and they've been really successful. They're not a wave, you don't wave your magic wand and they get rid of poverty overnight, but they have been very successful, and I'm really glad we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're out of time for questions. We now move on to item 9. Motion 1, I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Hamlet to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I rise to stand to move this cross-party motion with Councillor Louis Hamlet on tackling harassment and abuse in public life. Madam Mayor, I think colleagues in the Chamber will agree that there are far few greater honours than being elected by your community to represent them. We believe that our democracy is special. Too many brave women and men fought hard to ensure that all people were equal, our voices, our votes and our opinions. But, Madam Mayor, our democracy is facing a crisis of confidence. Too many people don't believe that the council can do things. They believe that we act in our own interests and that we put our self-interest before those of the community. The rise of populism and division has fed this mood. It pretends that complex problems can be fixed by using easy slogans. It refuses to take any responsibility and instead it sets neighbour and neighbour to seek out blame. But it's been able to thrive because we've never had an adequate enough response to meet the threat. We pretend we can't ignore it, we can't dismiss it, and we can't pretend that things will go back to how they used to be. There was never a global age. Every generation has had its fight, and our generation must fight to rebuild trust. But, Madam Mayor, the starting point of that cannot be to call out to those who seek to divide us, but to instead offer a vision, the leadership to unite, coming together behind a shared future. Too much of disclosure has been affected by poor regulation on social media. Platforms such as Facebook and Twitter and others do little to combat hate, division and intimidation in public life. They allow users to harass, defame and attack, where the balance of what seems acceptable is shifting increasingly to a point where normal people are fearful of speaking up. So I welcome the government's legislation on introducing new laws to help change this. But, Madam Mayor, unfortunately, I don't believe that the laws themselves will be enough. Too many are left with civil action as the only route to protection, and that means right at the start we're all unequal when it comes to law. It means that those with the deepest pockets are able to buy protection and normal hard-working people are denied it. It's still far too common for the police to advise people and victims of harassment to remove themselves of social media entirely, ignoring instead that the targeted campaign has a clear pattern of isolating victims wider from society. And there is little doubt, Madam Mayor, that women and ethnic minorities are targeted more, with hate and division multiplied, often deliberately wound up by those with a sinister agenda. But, Madam Mayor, we must be true to ourselves. We must not let those who trade on division to reduce us to fear. If we're not true to ourselves, Madam Mayor, we're nothing. We're rooted in the community, we're passionate about change, and we believe we have something to offer. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and of course, Happy New Year to you and a peaceful year to all in the Chamber and the Borough, of course. I do rise to second this motion and welcome the announcement in Her Majesty's speech at the opening of Parliament, indicating that the Government will develop legislation to improve online safety for those who serve in many walks of public life. This should cover all who serve in our public life, from voluntary, emergency and rescue services, as well as all levels of elected governance. The Liberal Democrats, which I join and believe in, exist to build and safeguard a fair, free and open society in which we seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, in which no one shall be saved by poverty, ignorance or conformity. Each individual human being should be able to go about their daily lives in peace without having malicious intent towards each other. It doesn't matter what organisation someone supports, be that local or national governance, community or voluntary organisation, or an individual expressing a view on an issue they have an opinion about. That person or group should be able to do so without fear of reprisal or malicious intent, be that physical, verbal or online. I am not unused to personal abuse, particularly online, just because of the values I hold, be that personal or political. On that occasion, such abuse can be deemed illegal. Only in the last few days I've been tagged in posts with generic threats and warnings about silencing free speech, and including accusations of covering up misconduct generated simply by publicly
being a seconder to this very motion. This motion is not a stifling free speech. It is not an attempt to support the cover-up of misconduct. Indeed, the Liberal Democrats leadership, along with the Conservative group leader, asked for a meeting with the Chief Executive when such allegations surfaced online. And were instrumental in ensuring an open, transparent investigation took place in the allegations which we've had a report on. This motion is about personal abuse that is unacceptable in any way in society, which for more vulnerable in particular can have long-lasting damaging effects both mentally and physically. As an individual, I would never wish anybody to be silenced when they're exercising their right to free speech. But as a person, we should not be allowed to make unsubstantiated allegations about individuals without bias. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unfortunately, Madam Mayor, whilst the advent of the internet and social media has reaped numerous benefits, it has also created a domain for all that is wrong with humankind, a faceless and nameless domain where cowards reside under the guise of righteousness. Their residence in this domain, however, is not one of righteousness, rather one of hate, divisiveness and intolerance. Madam Mayor, I fully accept and respect the right of every person to hold and voice their opinion, be that through social media, email, physical protest, or by asking questions in public meetings. It is possible to do these things, to express oneself, to voice disagreement in a productive and civilised manner. When individuals or groups resort to harassment, threats and intimidation, as we have seen and continue to see locally, then this is an admission on their part that they don't have a valid argument, that their opinion is probably misinformed or indeed uninformed. Madam Mayor, the most saddening and disgusting thing about the behaviour of some of these unpleasant individuals is that they use the suffering and horror of real victims to inflict further horror and suffering on their own victims. They have an ulterior motive, a more sinister agenda, which could be political, or it could be to create a distraction, taking the focus away from the damage they themselves have caused to the communities of Oldham and profited from. These cowards may profess to be proud of their borough, but it's obvious from their behaviours and comments that all they do is denigrate this great borough and its residents and attack anyone trying to improve the lives of our residents. Madam Mayor, councillors, council officers, volunteers, community groups, food banks, schools, faith groups, residents of Oldham, our nurses and doctors, the police, the fire service and our very active youth, along with so many others, work together to make Oldham the best place it can be. We all have common strands, common traits such as sympathy, empathy, and acknowledgement and appreciation that we are lucky to be in the positions we are in. And I'm not talking about job titles here, I'm talking about our positions in life. We are grateful that we can stand, that we can talk, walk, financially contribute, go home to a loving family, and all the other things one may take for granted. This appreciation, combined with the knowledge that there are those less fortunate, not through any fault of their own, is the common thread that drives all the aforementioned contributors to help those less fortunate than themselves. Then there are those who lack empathy, who lack sympathy, who attack the very people that are trying to make this borough a better place. They attack the very people who give their time and energy to improve the lives of others. They exploit the pain and suffering of the most vulnerable in our society for their own personal and political agendas. My message, Madam Mayor, is one of support and solidarity with those human beings who project the best of human nature, despite being attacked by faceless keyboard warriors. I thank all those contributing towards making Oldham a better place and improving the lives of others, and ask that they continue their fantastic work. I also have a message for those who seek to divide us, whether that be for financial or political gain, that your poison will not take effect, because the beating heart of Oldham is the vast majority of wonderful human beings who care about others and go out of their way to help others. This is the antidote to your poison. Please support the motion.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a brief thing to say about the abuse that you can get. I think it would be very easy for people to say that this is some way of us trying to avoid scrutiny, and it's not. I think one of the most important jobs of everybody here is to stand up and speak to people who disagree with you. We have to be able to do that, and that's not what this motion is not trying to stop that. As somebody who stands, I took advantage when I stood for election. I've stood for election 4 times. I don't put my address in the public domain, because in the past my family has had death threats simply because we're mixed race. I, in the 2017 general election, had rape threats online. Now, that's not avoiding just talking to somebody who disagrees with you. It's unfair threats which take people who are just trying to benefit the people of their borough or their country, and it makes it difficult to stand up and to stand for office and to try and improve things. So that's what this motion is trying to say. Nothing about avoiding scrutiny, that's fine. Just making sure that people can be honest and decent and try and do the best for their communities. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm rising to speak in support of this motion because I myself only decided to stand to become a councillor less than 2 years ago, and so that decision is still pretty fresh in my mind. The thing that I remember most and that stands out to me is that when I told my family and friends of my decision to stand, the very first comment that I received was, why would I want to involve myself in the rough and tumble of political life? Now, we all know that politics is competitive, but that phrase, rough and tumble, should never be used to normalise any politician being subjected to abuse and harassment which is designed to undermine sense of worth, peace of mind, but more importantly, our ability to go about our day-to-day lives without fear of violence, be it physical or verbal. Digital communication, especially social media, is providing a vehicle for increased and, in some cases, relentless abuse, as has been the case with my good friend and colleague, Councillor Aroo Shah. This abuse often takes on particularly insidious form when directed at politically active women. It goes way beyond disagreeing with, challenging or criticising a point of view, because these posts are personalised, sexualised and threatening. But what is most worrying is that posts like these, attacking a woman's legitimacy, are on the increase. They question every woman's right to be present in politics, our ability to be leaders in public life. The core intention of this online abuse is to silence voices and political activism. Therefore, in this short speech, I just want to appeal to everybody in this chamber, whether elected or not, to come together and to work together to combat this very real threat to our hard-won democratic rights in tackling harassment and abuse in public life. Thank you.
Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to support this motion. Madam Mayor, I fully appreciate that people, when they're standing in office and participating in politics, have to anticipate a higher level of public scrutiny than the general population. But a review from the Independent Committee for Standards in Public Life indicates that during the last election, that's in 2017, Madam Mayor, political candidates had to endure threats and intimidation far beyond the scope of scrutiny. It also indicates, Madam Mayor, I'm trying to make a speech here and I don't like being interrupted. No, I'm not. I think you're missing the point, and I wouldn't wish to communicate with you. Yeah. It also indicates that the female politicians are disproportionately the targets of intimidation, as well as those from ethnic and religious minorities and LGBT communities. The review relies on a range of evidence, including findings by Amnesty International UK, showing that black and Asian female politicians face a disproportionate amount of online abuse, In a survey by BBC's Radio 5, 64% of the 113 members of Parliament participating believed female politicians were subject to more abuse than their male counterparts. Britain is far from unique in this respect. A 216 study of female lawmakers surveyed over 500 female politicians from 107 countries. Nearly 50% of the respondents had received insulting or threatening comments about women's ability and or role in the context of their profession. These trends in abuse are driving people, especially women, away from public life, and we need to make sure that this stops immediately. Online abuse threatens to reinforce existing inequalities and discrimination in social and public life. It could deepen divisions within and across our communities, and it even discourage a whole generation of young men, women, people from black and minority ethnic communities, the LGBT, people with disabilities, and many others from public life. Councillor Shah has mentioned in her opening remark about people from different ages having different challenges. Let me refer you to something which was discovered in 1954, and a lot of people who have done courses, etc., will be familiar with this. It's called the Allport's Scale of Prejudice. That was devised by a psychologist, Gordon Allport, in 1954. And I think what we're talking about today is the first or the second stage of that five-stage model of prejudice and discrimination, which starts with anti-locution and avoidance, and, Madam Mayor, it extends with extermination. I fully support this motion, and I urge members to vote for this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Torr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to support this motion because harassment and abuse in any shape or form, whether it's in public life or a private life, whether it's towards public officials or ordinary people, whether it's domestic violence or extremism, is totally unacceptable. Not long ago, we lost our two dear sisters, two lovely mothers, two hard-working, great world leaders, Jo Cox in UK and Benazir Bhutto in Pakistan. They both were victims of hate, extremism, harassment and abuse. They both had so much to live for, but both lost their lives. They were brutally murdered in cold blood of hate. We all need to stand together against fear and hate. And I repeat, we all need to stand together against fear and hate. We need to celebrate community, solidarity, and diversity. I urge all councillors to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bashforth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've not prepared a speech, but just listening to Warren going out, you're feeding them. Well, is that saying that we shouldn't speak out because we're frightened of what the online trolls are going to say? That's absolutely what he's saying, isn't it? And that's the crux of the point here, isn't it? There are people out there who are calling such as us undemocratic, corrupt, and yet using corrupt, undemocratic and totally unfounded accusations to stop us exercising our democratic rights. Now, I'm old enough and ugly enough to defend myself, and by Christ, I've done that. By goodness, I've done that many a times. I'm quite happy to take criticism for the way I look, the way I talk, the things I say, the views I hold, my political views, and the way I perform or I don't perform. I have no problem with that. I'll take that every day. But when I see myself and colleagues being accused of being paedophiles, taking backhanders, supporting corrupt actions without a shred of evidence, now I find that very difficult to deal with. And, OK, Warren said, don't be a councillor then. Well, of course I'm going to be a councillor. And as I said, I'll take all the criticism that's thrown at me for things that I do, don't do, or the views I hold. But I would never dream of accusing somebody of such heinous activities, crimes, without a shred of evidence. And if I was to go online and start calling somebody, a member of the public, things like that, goodness me, I would be dragged before the courts. So I'm not saying defend councillors and stop people slagging us off. I'm not saying that at all. Carry on, do that. But if somebody's got a serious accusation against somebody, then for goodness sake, take it to the authorities. Or come and meet us and challenge us. If somebody thinks that I'm a paedophile because I've been accused it by proxy, by association, even if I haven't in words, many times, I want them people to come get to the police station, tell them what I've done. If somebody thinks I've taken backhanders, go to the police station and tell them what I've done, and I will willingly go to that police station and give myself and say, I haven't, but bloody well prove it. The point is that we've got to a point, it's a bit like road rage, the internet now, isn't it? You can say what you want. The rules are completely different. Say what you want, abuse people, go away, and nobody knows who you are. And that's a problem. It's part of modern life. We have to put up with it. It isn't going to go away. And no matter what we say here, it won't go away. But it don't, you know, at the end of the day, we are all human beings as well as councillors. Being a councillor doesn't turn you into some sort of, I don't know, some sort of strange character who has no feelings. And every time I see somebody, well, I don't see it that often because I've given Facebook up. I used to be on it all the time, if people know. I was never off it. I just don't use it now except to go and glance on it, although I might return shortly. But when you see yourself being called a bastard, and I will swear, and other unsavoury names that I won't use, it does you feel sick, don't you? Because people who have never even met you, know nothing about you, are calling you horrible names and accusing you of things that you don't even know you've done. That's where it's wrong. It's wrong. We are not going to stop it tonight, but I do think it's right that it's spoken about. And to think that we shouldn't say this because they will start attacking us for it, well, let them attack us. Let them attack us. That's, you know, it isn't fine, but they will. So, Madam Mayor, I do support the motion, and as I say, it's in no way means saying protect councillors from abuse, or, well, from criticism, or so, I'm okay, yeah, I'll wrap it up, because my democratic rights are being taken off me by... No, seriously, what was and started off as a really useful tool for all society and all things, political, social, friends, family, has turned into a cesspit of nonsense and rubbish. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I know a lot of people would like to speak about this, but unfortunately, I'm just going to get Sean to speak, and then...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Clearly, I rise to support this motion. I'm really welcome the speeches that we've heard here tonight from members from across the chamber. I think they've made some really excellent points, but I just wanted to share some personal experience. Like many others in this chamber who have described their experiences, I've been subject to online harassment and abuse, as many of you will be aware. And the feeling that I used to feel when I used to look at the things being said about me online, which you know not to be true, but yet you feel you cannot respond to for fear of being attacked even further, the feeling that you feel is loneliness. But I do think that I need to acknowledge the occasions where out of these feelings of loneliness and out of these feelings of frustration, I have perhaps responded in a way that I should not have done. But I just want to say that the people that asked Councillor Taylor the questions, why bother? Why would you want to subject yourself to that? That people in Oldham, as Councillor Mushtaq said, the vast majority are decent people. The vast majority do not go along with the kind of threats, harassment and abuse that we see online directed at members in this chamber and other people who put them forward for elected office. And I think the message that needs to come out of this chamber, and the message that I'm going to take away from this debate tonight, because of the cross-party nature of this motion and because of the contributions that have been made, is that if you are considering putting yourself forward for election, or if you are somebody who is here, who is the victim of this harassment and bullying, you are not alone. People in this chamber stand together in calling out this kind of harassment and abuse and supporting each other. Everybody in here comes into public life because they feel they have something to offer. And so I do support this motion, and I look forward to hearing Councillor Shah's right of reply. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shah, right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I go into this, can I just echo what the Leader of the Council, Sean Fielding, has said? We've heard some fantastic contributions tonight, and the comments that Steve made are absolutely right, and Councillor Sam Al-Hamdani. This motion isn't about self-gratification, Madam Mayor. It's not about saying, oh God, we're so sensitive and we're politicians and we can't take what people say about us. We are open to scrutiny. We are open to accountability. That's what we fight for, and that's why we come here and we put in all the work that we do. But what we can't say is that it's okay to be personal, to attack us, to abuse us, because that just doesn't impact us, Madam Mayor. It has a massive impact on our family. And when we enter politics, that's a choice that we make as individuals. We don't ask our family members, our loved ones and our friends, are you okay with this? Because what might be said about me, rightfully or wrongfully, will have an impact on you, on your life. That is something we don't do. So this motion is simply about saying, treat us with the respect that we honour and we do. And this job, Madam Mayor, when I got into this, I didn't think that I would spend my whole life, give up my whole life to politics, and I did. I've sacrificed some personal choices that I've made myself, but I have sacrificed them because I believe I could serve my community, and I think I've done a really good job. And like Councillor Bashford says, for people who think that I haven't, I'm there for you to ask me and challenge me, and I will, in a respectful way, respond to that. But if you're going to take to social media and call us names, then that's not acceptable. And I'm not going to be shamed into standing up and speaking up for myself and other people who give their lives up to public service. So, Madam Mayor, I want to thank the members in this debate, and at times I suspect many of you feel alone and perhaps even isolated, and I want to say that my door is always open for you. So if you need any support, help or guidance, please feel free to get in touch. And I say that because I know how this feels. I can speak to my own experience, Madam Mayor. The person embarked on a targeted campaign of harassment for no other reason than I dared to challenge his behaviour. The individual deliberately sought out to bring shame to me in my community and impact my family. He inferred that women in my position must have sexually transmitted diseases. He said that I must have slept my way to position. He has inferred, in other posts, Madam Mayor, sorry, Madam Mayor. Actually, I don't feel, I'm touched by the contributions that have been made tonight, and I resent the way public servants aren't allowed to stick up for themselves without being told that they are just, self-obsessed. So, yeah, so this individual came after me because I dared to challenge his behaviour. He inferred that women in my profession must have sexually transmitted diseases, and the only reason I hold the position I hold is because I slept my way to this position. If only, Madam Mayor. He also indicated in other posts that he has an inbox full of stories about my personal life, and he makes threats to publish these. The pattern of directing attacks towards my personal life, Madam Mayor, by him is not a coincidence. He has caused great distress to me within my community, but you know what? More importantly, he's caused upset to my family. It is textbook misogyny, and I'll use that word, and no doubt later on he will start saying, oh my God, she uses this to progress her professional career. No, I don't. This is my reality, and I'm sick of that being undermined. He is clearly designed to cause me sustained reputational damage. It soon moves on, though, because he claims to be a fictional writer, and he does write a lot of fiction. He soon moves on, though never too far, to him accusing me of the covering up of child sexual exploitation. Madam Mayor, Who in this chamber would ever do that? What kind of person does it take to do that? And the very fact that this person can think it is more a reflection of him than it is me or anyone in this chamber. Yeah. He then goes on to accuse me of misusing my position in public office. And you know what, Madam Mayor? People say to me all the time, well, if that's not true, why do you not answer it? Well, if that's not true, why do you not answer it? Why do your colleagues not? Why isn't Sean answering the fact that he's not a paedophile protector? Why isn't Jim McMahon not answering them questions? Madam Mayor, because we are too aware that if you were to even counter every single accusation he makes, you know that something more ridiculous and outrageous will follow. Madam Mayor, because he and these people, they are not about truth, but they're about intimidation. And that's what he tried to do. Madam Mayor, I was born and raised in Glodwick, Oldham, and I came into public service because I wanted to serve my community. I've always acted appropriately in my political and my professional life. I've never abused my position, and I've never, ever compromised any confidences. But Madam Mayor, that level of attack, or that in itself, is not enough when the level of attack that is against you is not about the truth. He then went on to share pictures of me with my brother and one of my friends called Mohammed Imran Ali, who I've known since I'm 11 years old. Both of them have been into prison. And he did that because he wanted to then create a perception that I am part of, and he says this in his post, that I'm part of a criminal gang, that I am part of a cartel. Madam Mayor, he knows full well that I have not covered up child sexual exploitation, that I have never misused my position in public office, because he's asked these questions. He's asked these questions and he's had the answers. He knows I'm not part of a cartel, but he also, Madam Mayor, is fully aware that I would never condone any acts, not that my brother did and not that my friend did. But Madam Mayor, whilst my long-standing friendships and relationships will be difficult for some people to accept, and I fully understand that, I can't pretend that they don't exist. And I certainly cannot turn my back on people that I've known since childhood, or, you know, for my political convenience. And I certainly don't forget where I came from. There were times in my life, Madam Mayor, where I could only put in about £3 petrol, and I'd have to consider every journey to see whether it was worth me making. Now I'm in a position, Madam Mayor, where I don't even consider my journeys, and I'm able to put petrol in my car without giving it a second thought. There have been times in my life where I've longed for certain type of clothing, or, you know, longed for certain shoes, or my hair to get done in a hairdresser's, and I've had to consider them choices. But today, Madam Mayor, I'm fortunate enough to do that for myself, and not just to do it for myself, I'm fortunate enough, I'm blessed enough to be able to do it for other people that I care about. There was times when I thought, will I ever have my own home? Will I ever be able to move out? Now, Madam Mayor, I have my own home, but I live with my mum out of choice. And all this happened because somebody believed in me, because the kind of community that I come from, the stacks are against you. It's hope and it's opportunity, and somebody believed in me. And I swear to God, if people believe that I have not got here as a first Asian female cabinet member of Oldham Council and the first Asian statutory deputy leader, female deputy leader of Oldham Council, by not working hard, I can tell you this. I have worked 50 times harder than my peers and my colleagues in this chamber to hold this position. I don't pretend to be somebody I'm not, Madam Mayor. I am straight talking, but I'm very kind and respectful towards people. I do not disown people for political convenience or to advance my political career. If you want everyday normal people to enter public life and to come forward who care and want to contribute, too many people come into public life because they are driven by a passion for public service, a desire for better, and believing that they have something to offer. But often, Madam Mayor, the impact goes beyond those who make the choice to step forward, and it can affect your family and your friends. As we are fighting for greater protection, we ought to reflect that the vast majority of people, like Councillor Shaw Fielding said, like Shahid Mushtaq said, that the vast majority of people are decent, respectful, and want the same for our communities. So for those who step into public life, I sincerely thank you. And to the friends and family who support you, your support means the world. And it's more valuable than you'll ever know.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Does Council agree the motion? Those in favour? We'll class that as unanimous. Thank you. Sorry. On the second motion, unfortunately, we've only got time to move it.
Sorry.
Second it, we don't have time to debate it.
More than happy to just formally move.
Ready to second it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Does Council agree that motion? Yeah, agreed. The motion is carried. Item 10, notice of opposition business. Motion 1. The mover of this motion has indicated they wish to alter the motion. Councillor Harkness.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does Council agree to the altered motion? This will be signified without discussion. Thank you. I call on Councillor Harkness to move and Councillor Williamson to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The cuts in education since 2015 are having a huge impact on schools. Before 2015, the school budgets were protected and the pupil premium, proposed by the Liberal Democrats, provided much more funding for students from deprived backgrounds. As soon as the Conservatives were not kept in check by the Liberal Democrats, the school cuts to budgets began. We have seen 5 years of funding cuts for schools. Every school in our borough have had cuts. In real terms, it is £12 million since 2015 and more are expected. We're looking at around £300 per pupil less. The biggest cost of a school is its staff. If funding is cut, then staff are cut. Schools have had to go through redundancies by cutting the number of teachers and the number of support staff. Without staff, students cannot be given the interventions they require and that they are entitled to. This results in reductions of office staff, reductions of in-class support, reductions in class catch-up interventions, reductions in SEN support and reductions in pastoral care. Students with special educational needs and disability are the most vulnerable, but are also some of the most affected by cuts to school funding. Most students with special educational needs and disabilities are supported with schools' nominal budgets. Schools often are not having the funding to support students adequately under their nominal budgets. Those students who require top-up funding are those who have an education, health and care plan. The high needs budget, however, is not keeping up with special educational needs. Those students are the ones who are most affected. We therefore see evidence of some local authorities, for cost reasons, choosing not to assess for education, health and care plans or issue plans when they should. We also see some schools who are reluctant to say they can meet needs of some students with education, health and care plans because they need to find the first £6,000, money which they do not have. Students then may not get the level of provision that they should and the level of intervention that they need. Last year, the government announced, after all budgets had been looked at in schools, that teachers would be getting a pay rise for that academic year. That sounds good news, particularly for me as a teacher myself. However, this was not fully funded. That therefore meant to fund this, schools needed to make cuts, and that means more sackings. The workload has to be carried out by less staff and leads to issues of mental well-being. People go into work in schools because they care about the children and do everything they can to support them. So the work still needs doing, and that leads to obviously increasing workloads. And the rate of people leaving the teaching profession is too high already, and there's nothing that this government has done to address this. All the constant cuts achieve is less people stay in the profession. Please support this motion to call to address for this shortfall in funding for schools. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to bring us back to the last century. I know it sounds strange, but it does mean something about this notice of motion. In the 1920s, we had Lloyd George, Bonar Law, Stanley Baldwin, and Labour's Ramsay MacDonald. And when it came to education, they set up the local education authorities because they understood how important it was to educate the younger generation so that they could work after the First World War. We are now in the second decade of the 21st century, and I just cannot believe we are letting our children down when it comes to education. I'm sure that this was not the vision of those previous Prime Ministers who wanted to help a generation of children to be educated. These local education authorities monitored the needs of schools from nurseries to those serving students older than 14. LEA set the regulations and rules for the students who attended the local public schools and their parents. In essence, education during 20th century England set many of the standards for the educational practices currently in place for public education. It does not matter what either the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party said in their manifestos. Neither of us are in government. We have no control. It is a Conservative government who have pledged to commit funding through to 2022-23 only, which means that schools are still worse off than they were in 2015-16. This is not good enough. We are letting down a whole generation of children because schools are struggling to maintain the good standard of education for these children. Not only that, but special needs pupils are being penalised when schools can no longer cope because there is not enough money to pay for their extra support. I know that money is not everything. Good teachers can overcome this and use imaginative ways of using their funding to support all pupils' educations, as I saw on both occasions when I was a governor. I'm pleased that we have asked the Chief Executive to write to the Minister of Education and the Prime Minister to ask for the minimum funding. Shame on the Conservative government for letting a whole generation slip through the net. Is that what the previous Prime Ministers in the 1920s wanted? I think not. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I call on Councillor Mushtaq to move and Councillor Moores to second an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, it frustrates me that education is used as a political football in the way that it is. I speak to schools who tell me of the challenges they face and how much more the educational outcomes could improve if they had levels of funding they should be receiving. To stress that point, they're not asking for extra funding, they're asking for the level of funding they should be receiving, or rather, the young people of Oldham should be receiving. The national funding formula is a complex beast, and as the motion states, there are predicted losses to Oldham schools in 2020 of £12 million, equating to an average of £238 per pupil. As one of the additional paragraphs to the amended motion says, under the Conservative manifesto, schools will have £2 billion less spending power in 2020-21 year than they did in 2015-16. So in 5 years, in which time inflation has risen and technological advances have been made, the institutions that educate our future leaders, our future teachers, our future functioning members of society will be £2 billion worse off. How then can we create the learning environments in which we produce the generations of tomorrow? Brexit has created a huge divide in the country, with many arguing that we are a great nation, with which I agree, and that we can go it alone. The second argument holds no weight if the very institutions that are being tasked to create the future economists, the future negotiators, the future politicians and the future great thinkers are today telling us that they are struggling to pay the bills or to buy books or to keep their schools open 5 days a week. The two are connected, Madam Mayor. As stated in the motion, and I quote, schools are struggling to maintain the standard of education with the level of cuts faced. To go it alone as a nation and to stand any chance, we need excellence for all of our young people and nothing less. Yet, we are standing here discussing the prospect of our schools not even meeting the expected standard. Excellence under this Conservative government seems but a distant dream we can only imagine in a future brave new world. The impact, as always, will end up hitting the most vulnerable in society, as Councillor Harkness has said, with those young people with special educational needs and disabilities being affected most by the cuts. Madam Mayor, Mahatma Gandhi once said, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. If we were to adhere to and adopt this, then it's safe to say that this government and the coalition government of 2010 have failed in its core purpose and the purpose of its existence. The Oldham Send strategy is focused on ensuring an inclusive approach, not just to meet the needs of our most vulnerable young people and their families, but inclusive in that they are encouraged to succeed to the highest level and gain the best employment, living the best possible lives they can. The government could learn a lot from us in Oldham and would be happy to talk to them. Going back to education as a political football, I believe there should be cross-party consensus on education and that it should never be discussed during an election campaign because we've got it right and it's no longer an issue. The reality, unfortunately, is far removed from this utopian fantasy because the Conservative Party believe a good education is the preserve of some, not all. And whilst this ideology has life and this government is in place, I fear similar motions will continue to come and similar debates and discussions will continue to be had. Please support the amendment. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak? No? Sorry. Where are we going? Councillor Moores to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support all that Councillor Mushtaq said there, but as a school governor in both the primary and secondary sector, I know only too well that schools are struggling to balance their budgets and the impact this is having on students and staff. And whilst I support the spirit of the original motion, it is important that we understand where the responsibility for the disastrous funding of the education system lies. During the recent general election, all three major parties made pledges on school funding, pledges that I hoped would address this very important issue. Well, the Tory announcement on school funding was underwhelming to say the least. It was woefully inadequate and will not even begin to reverse the cuts schools have faced since their austerity agenda began in 2010. The Liberal Democrat general election pledge was not much better and totally failed to address the historic underfunding prior to 2015 that was imposed by the then coalition government of which they were a part. Only Labour promised to reverse the cuts imposed on schools and invest in the education system. As I said previously, it is important that we understand where the blame for the underfunding of the education system lies. The election is over and the solution to this problem now lies fairly and squarely on the shoulders of the Tory government. Only they have the power to resolve this issue and ensure that education receives the funding it needs and deserves. Unfortunately, Gavin Williamson and his Tory colleagues can't see or don't care that since 2010, school budgets have been devastated. Their attitude is, crisis? What crisis? In October last year, Education Secretary Gavin Williamson appeared on the breakfast show, on the BBC breakfast show, where he said, things have been a bit tight in schools and they need a little bit of extra money. A bit tight? According to the National Education Union, between 2015 and 2020, 92 out of 97 Oldham schools will have lost £58 million in government funding, equivalent to losing £298 per pupil. This is not a bit tight, it is a disaster. I wrote that last night, and this morning I picked this up as an email. It's a message from the Secretary of State for Education, a New Year message. I received that as a school governor. The message told me nothing new. It was just more of the same with regards to funding. But he does go on to say he wants every child to have a chance to make the most of their potential. If he is sincere in this belief, he needs to urgently review the education budget and ensure that all schools receive the funding they need to achieve his wish, that all children achieve their full potential. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I ask members to support the amendment.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As somebody who's worked in education for 17 years and has really seen the impact on these cuts, I mean, I was made redundant in 2015, and the cohort of students that I had then actually went on to have no support in school with their additional needs, with their behavioural needs, and quite a lot of those students ended up in the pupil referral units because schools literally didn't have enough staff to handle them. What happens as a consequence is a lot of those students, and I know that Manchester Prue had over 500 students when I worked for it, is that the life chances of those young people get seriously reduced, and more and more children ended up in alternative provision because of the cuts to education budgets. So I would like to support this motion because I think the most important thing we can do is to support our young people and invest in them.
Councillor Hudson.
Madam Mayor, I support the motion but not the amendment. I think I would say to the mover of the motion and the seconder, nobody twisted the Liberal Democrats' hand to join the Conservatives in the 2010 election. And we've just had an election, and I would remind people that money isn't... You can't spend money you haven't got. And millions of people decided that Boris Johnson's idea was right. So let's give the Prime Minister a chance to carry out his proposals. I'll be the first one to grumble if he doesn't. And I've made that very clear in meetings in London. I will say this. Of course, everybody supports, and she's quite right, Councillor Williamson. For decades, people have supported young people and the need to give them a proper education. And I think that is necessary. And I admire teachers for being part of young people's lives and guiding them on the tracks. But it isn't all about money, and particularly money we haven't got. People chose in their millions to decide they wanted a Conservative government, and I think it's time for the Liberals and Labour Party to let them get on with it and then grumble if they don't come up trumps. I personally think we haven't given Boris Johnson a chance. I think he has made claims what he's going to do. If he doesn't do it, he'll pay very severely at the next election. I think he'll also pay by members like me that will tell him he has to find solutions to what he promised people. And I think things like this come up for pure politics, and I think somebody mentioned about not having politics in education as a football. I agree with that. It's too important. It's important for our young people. It's important for the teachers, and it's important for the Metropolitan Borough of Oldham. So give Boris a chance and then grumble if it goes wrong. But the trouble with the Labour and Liberal parties, they haven't got over the fact that they lost the election, and all this is reiterated what they've said much and more for months and months, and they still lost.
Councillor Harkness to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, apparently Boris has never told a lie in his political career, so we've got to remember that. So we've got it safe in that one, haven't we? Councillor Mushtaq started. He made some good points. Didn't really talk about the amendment as much, but he did talk about political football. But he has proposed a motion which is all about political football, really. Councillor Moores did talk about the amendment, and he again made some good points. I just want to say about the funding manifestos. Right, okay, so Lib Dem's manifesto was targeted intervention through the pupil premium. The Lib Dem motion manifesto also was approved as realistic and is fully costed, and was proved as realistic by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. That's something that the Labour Party's manifesto was not. So, you know, the Labour Party's manifesto quite a lot about you know, promising unicorns and lots of things like that, and it wasn't funded. Pre-2015, school funding. Schools' funding was not cut; it was frozen. The budgets, okay, and the Liberal Democrats put through a policy which was supported by the Conservatives of the pupil premium, which is about an additional £1,000 per pupil. There was good points made about the pupil referral units, how students, because of cuts and the fact that more people are going to pupil referral units than should be doing, and that's a failure. If the student gets to a pupil referral unit, that is a failure of the system anyway. But going there because the funding is not there for the when it should be, and they should be able to cope in a mainstream school. So yeah, I think. Generally, the amendment doesn't add anything to it. It's pretty much irrelevant, and that's why we won't be supporting the amendment.
Councillor Mushtaq to reply.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, just to echo what Garth said about Boris Johnson, and I appreciate we have a lot of respect for John here in Oldham, but Boris Johnson is someone who can mislead the Queen. I don't think he's going to take much. I don't think he's going to take much notice of our respected leader of the local Conservative group. With regard to Garth's comment about me not talking about the motion, I think he wasn't listening because I quoted things directly from the motion, lines from the motion, figures from the motion. And I think, the amendment, and I think it is important to highlight actually what the three main parties have said and what they've done and the impact that's had, because the impact is being felt in Oldham. And John's comment about millions voting, I think we can all agree this election was not based on domestic issues. If it had been, we wouldn't have a Conservative government today. So I'm going to continue to support the amendment, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Yeah, any abstentions? Does any member wish to speak on the motion as amended?
Seconded. Can move to vote, please.
Okay.
therefore Councillor Hartness has still got the right to reply if he wishes.
Councillor Hartness, you still have the right to reply if you wish. Thank you very much. So, does Council agree the motion as amended? Those in favour? Unanimous. No? Any abstentions? I'd just like to inform you there is only 8 minutes left to deal with the rest. Motion 2. The Chief Executive has been notified in writing of a change of mover to this motion. Is this agreed? I call on Councillor Hal Amdini to move and Councillor Murphy to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rise to move the motion. Seems to be my job tonight to speak when I wasn't originally expecting to do at that point in the process. And at the moment, I'm speaking the words of Howard Sykes. I hope I do them justice. I know, but I'm not talking about the EU, so I can't get misinterpreted for 6 months. Do we want to combat the negative effects of climate change in the Oldham Borough? Of course we do. We do this job for a reason, and I think has been made clear through a lot of the statements tonight. We did that out of a local love and respect for our area. We need to reverse the dramatic fall in bee and insect populations, not just in the borough, across the UK, across Western Europe, across the US. And this is a small way in which we can do it. By aiding biodiversity, developing bee corridors, urban meadows. I did say I wasn't going to talk about EU, and this wasn't in the speech, but by carrying on the work of the EU in banning neonicotinoids. What I and my fellow Liberal Democrat councillors are proposing is bringing forward a development and new aspects of a policy to the table. The bee population, insects, play a vital role in the pollination of trees, crops and flowers. I've seen figures bandied around of $262 billion in terms of the amount of difference that makes to farming, and that was stated, but then afterwards it was immediately said it's actually priceless because there is no alternative way of doing the work that is done. Now, that is only having a small impact, but we do have a rural environment here, and it does have an impact on our urban habitat. Our roadsides, our wastelands can be transformed into diverse natural habitats, wildflower beds, sedge grasses, and because of the reduction in direct management, that's going to bring down maintenance costs and diversifying the local wildlife. It turns ugly roadside grass verges into patches of flowers, shrubs and insect hotels. And those insect hotels, they're rocks placed in a way to attract different animal species to the area. It's not just the honeybees that everyone sees the pictures of. It's all the different bee types which actually have a massive influence on our natural habitat, and they need this encouragement in order to survive and continue to be part of our natural habitat. We are not just protecting the environment. Living in a green and vibrant area is beneficial to people's mental health, and we've talked about this earlier, and we will continue to do not just in this meeting and onwards. This motion is a fantastic opportunity for community groups to get involved, to help the borough and the parish councils develop these urban meadows throughout Oldham, and I recommend that all the political parties, and indeed the independents, work together on issues like climate change. Councillors, your vastly needed cooperation will improve the appearance of Oldham Borough and halt this terrible decline in UK nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm rising to support this motion because there's a number of sites in Crompton and Shaw that proved quite popular and it's really gone down well. So I'd just like to thank Glenn Dale and his team and locally John Ogden, who look after these sites and do a fantastic job of making the borough look really well. So it increases a lot of biodiversity, so there's another reason to support it there. We like bees, they're a good thing. We like bees. So it's another reason why I'm supporting the motion. And as an added extra, it saves money. It's a win-win. So I'm mindful that a lot of this motion is in place, ready to be, already maybe. So if it is, happy days. Easy motion to support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I call on Councillor Chatterton to move and Councillor Judd to second the amendment. We only have 3 minutes.
Okay. Things you can achieve in 3 minutes, Madam Mayor, can be quite something sometimes. Am I to move the amendment, Madam Mayor, to speak about my experience of the impact of wildflower gardens as a Royton councillor, something that Councillor Murphy has already referenced, that we are already doing some of these things to quite great and significant effect in the borough. Firstly, let me say this. I did not think Royton could get any better, and then along came a flower garden. The centre of Royton has undergone some quite significant change, as members will know, over the 8 years that I've been a councillor. And given I'm up for election this year, I'm going to take all the credit for that. So to briefly go over some of that change that I've initiated, Madam Mayor, after over 10 years of waiting for it, we finally saw the demolition of Royton Assembly Hall and the erection of the new Lidl supermarket. We've had a new health centre. The old one has been demolished and a shiny new one has now been built in the centre. Following that, we had a new leisure centre and a new swimming pool. Further outside of the centre of Royton, we've seen significant improvements and investment in Royton Park, Dogford Park and Bulcote Park. The cenotaph that Cath Ball initiated has been beautifully restored and improved, and 2 of our secondary schools have been rebuilt, in Royton and Crompton School and Oldham Academy North. I could go on, Madam Mayor, but you get the picture. Royton is pretty awesome. However, nothing, and you'll be surprised to hear, given what I've just listed, has had more positive feedback from local residents than the wildflower garden that now sits proudly in the centre of Royton. The flower garden is in the site of what was formerly the health centre. The health centre was demolished and that area was then surrounded and erected by 7-foot hoardings, as some of you will have seen. It's quite a significant piece of land and bang in the centre of Royton. Following the erection of hoardings for years as local councillors, we've had complaints about what an eyesore they were and could we do something about it to get rid of it. And sadly, the answer was no for much of that time. It was too expensive to make a car park, and that land was earmarked for future private investment. Until last year, Madam Mayor, when officers came to Royton councillors with an idea for a wildflower garden, and would we like to fund it from our ward budget? And would we, Madam Mayor? Yes, we would. This is how excited I am about our flower garden. Honestly, it's unbelievable. There was some scepticism, Madam Mayor, it'd be vandalised or demolished. But thankfully, that has not come to fruition. And Roytoners now take huge pride in our flower garden. It's not an over-exaggeration to say that this has had a transformative effect on how we view Royton. It's opened up the area, it looks prettier, and it looks brighter. Madam Mayor, after all our success in Oldham over the years with Britain in Bloom, we have done something I did not think was possible. We have upped our flower game, and long may that continue, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Hey.
Formally seconded.
You've got 30 seconds to reply.
I am carrying on, that's fine.
Thank you. Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? The amendment is carried. Does Council agree the motion as amended? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? On motion 3, can we have the Chief Executive has been notified in writing of a change of a seconder to this motion. Is this agreed? I call on Councillor Hamdani to move and Councillor Williams to second the motion.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Roberts.
I move that we refer this motion to overview and scrutiny.
Does the Council agree to move this to overview and scrutiny? All those in favour? Any abstentions? No. We're on to item 11, update on actions from Council. I call on Councillor Fielding to move and Councillor Gloucester to second the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unusually, I just want to make an observation on this report in moving it. On page 115 is the response from Mayor Andy Burnham to our motion at a previous council meeting regarding the proposed franchising arrangements for bus services in Greater Manchester. We passed a motion saying that we were in favour of this, and I just want to take this opportunity to encourage everybody in this chamber and everybody watching to fill in the consultation, or at least when you're at home this evening in your PJs and drinking your cup of hot bovril, to respond to GM bus consultation at ipsos-mori.com in favour of the proposed franchising arrangement, because the deadline for submissions is 11:59 p.m. this evening. But I'd move the report, Madam Mayor.
Second.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? No? Okay. Item 12, levy allocation methodology. I can't say it. Agreement. I call on Councillor Raymond to move and Councillor Fielding to second the report. Does any member wish to speak?
Briefly, I worked on some aspects in Cheshire where they reformed the system over there. One of the implications that came out in the way that they reformed things was an increase in fly tipping. And I think it's really important that we make sure, I know there has been some work done in terms of new monitoring that can be used for monitoring fly tipping, but I think we're all aware of the increase that we see in the borough and whether there are implications through the changes that are done here. If we're stopping people coming out from outside the borough and using the tips, that again potentially has implications for increases in fly tipping, and I think it's really important that that continued thinking is taken further as this is addressed. Thank you.
Does the mover wish to reply?
Thank you for those comments. I mean, when this report was presented, this is one of the questions that was raised, and in the areas of Great Britain where there is already been implemented, there's no evidence of extra fly tipping, but of course during the year that will be monitored and that will be sort of like, you know, taken care of. But thank you for raising that question.
Does Council agree the recommendation as detailed within the report? Item 13, Treasury Management and Mid-Year Review. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Fielding to second the report.
Moved, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does council agree recommendation as detailed within the report? Item 14, constitutional amendments. I call on Councillor Fielding to move and Councillor Gloucester to second the report.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does council agree the recommendation as detailed within the report? Item 15, financial procedure rules. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Gloucester to second the report.
Moved, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does council agree the recommendation as detailed within the report? Item 16, civic appreciation nomination. I call on Councillor Fielding to move and Councillor Gloucester to second the report.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Item 17, sorry? Oh, sorry, it doesn't say that. No. Does council agree the report? Thank you. Item 17, municipal calendar. I call on Councillor Fielding to move and Councillor Gloucester to second.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Second, Madam Mayor.